My name is Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you about the moment I realized I'd been living my entire life as if tomorrow depended on me getting everything right today. Before I go any further, I want to ask you something. If this story speaks to you, if you see yourself in what I'm about to share, please subscribe to this channel, share it with someone who needs to hear these words, and leave a comment telling me about your own struggle with control. I read every single one, and your stories remind me I'm not alone in this. I was 35 years old when my carefully constructed world started showing cracks. From the outside, I had it all figured out. I was a financial planner. Ironic, isn't it? Helping other people secure their futures while secretly terrified about my own. I had a wife, Monica, who was 8 months pregnant with our first child. We'd bought a house in the suburbs, saved for college funds that would start in 18 years, planned out our retirement down to the last detail. But here's what nobody saw. I was drowning in the weight of trying to control every possible outcome. Every night, I'd lie awake running scenarios. What if the market crashed? What if I lost my job? What if something happened during the delivery? What if I wasn't a good father? What if we couldn't afford childcare? What if? My days were consumed with contingency planning. I had backup plans for my backup plans. I'd mapped out our financial future for the next 40 years, adjusting for every possible variable I could think of. I subscribed to 17 different financial newsletters. I checked our investment accounts multiple times a day. I had spreadsheets for everything: monthly budgets, projected earnings, retirement scenarios in 3 different economic conditions. Monica noticed it first. One evening, about a month before our daughter was due, she found me at 2 a.m. in our home office, updating our financial projections for the 100th time. "Nathan, come to bed," she said gently, her hand on her belly. "I just need to finish this. If we adjust our savings rate by 3% and account for potential medical expenses..." "Nathan," her voice was firmer now, "you've been doing this for hours. You did this yesterday and the day before. Nothing's going to change between now and morning." "But what if something does change? What if I miss something important? What if we're not prepared?" She sat down heavily. Everything was heavy at 8 months pregnant, and looked at me with concern. "Honey, you can't control everything. You can't predict every possible thing that might happen. You're going to drive yourself crazy trying." "I'm not trying to control everything," I said, defensive. "I'm just trying to be responsible. Someone has to think about these things. Someone has to plan ahead. There's a difference between planning and obsessing, and lately you've been obsessing. You're not present anymore. Even when you're with me, your mind is somewhere in the future, worrying about things that haven't happened yet." Her words stung because they were true. I wasn't present. I was always 10 steps ahead, trying to anticipate every problem, prepare for every disaster, control outcomes that were fundamentally outside my control. "What if something goes wrong during the delivery?" I blurted out. "What if there are complications? What if—" "Then we'll handle it," she said quietly, "together. But worrying about it now doesn't prevent it. It just steals our joy today." I wanted to argue with her, to explain that my constant vigilance was how I kept us safe, how I ensured our future security. But deep down, I knew she was right. I wasn't protecting us. I was slowly destroying myself with the impossible task of trying to control tomorrow. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. Monica went into labor at 3 a.m., 2 weeks earlier than expected. I'd planned for this, of course. Hospital bag packed, route mapped out, backup routes identified in case of traffic, list of people to call in order of priority. But when the moment actually came, when Monica woke me up saying her water had broken, all my planning evaporated. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tie my shoes. I forgot the hospital bag. I took a wrong turn even though I'd driven the route a dozen times. I was so consumed with panic about everything that could go wrong that I was barely functional. At the hospital, as they prepped Monica for delivery, I paced the hallway. The labor was progressing quickly, too quickly according to the original timeline I'd created based on average first-time deliveries. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. This wasn't part of the plan. A nurse, an older woman with kind eyes, stopped me as I paced. First-time father? Yes, and it's happening too fast. The average labor for a first child is 12 to 14 hours, and we're only at 4 hours and she's already... Babies don't read statistics, the nurse said with a gentle smile. They come when they're ready, not when we plan for them. You can't control this. You can only be here for it. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I can't control this. For months I'd been trying to control everything about this pregnancy, this birth, this future. And in the moment that mattered most, I had absolutely no control. None. I sat down in one of those uncomfortable waiting room chairs and put my head in my hands. And for the first time in years, I prayed. Not the rote prayers I'd learned as a child in Sunday school, but something raw and desperate. God, if you're there, I need help. I can't control this. I can't make sure everything goes perfectly. I can't guarantee that my daughter will be healthy, or that Monica will be okay, or that I'll be a good father. I've been trying to control everything, and it's killing me. I'm so tired. I don't know how to let go, but I can't keep living like this. I sat there in that empty hallway expecting nothing, but something happened. Not a voice, not anything audible, but a thought came to me with a clarity that felt like it came from outside myself. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. Simple words, but they pierced through all my anxiety, all my planning, all my desperate attempts to secure the future. I didn't need to control tomorrow. I couldn't control tomorrow, but I could trust that someone bigger than me already held tomorrow in his hands. I sat there, letting those words sink in. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. The nurse came back. Your wife is asking for you. Your daughter is almost here. I stood up, and something felt different. The fear was still there. I'm not going to lie and say it disappeared completely, but underneath it was something else, a foundation, a sense that I wasn't alone in this, that I didn't have to figure it all out by myself. I walked into that delivery room, and 20 minutes later, I held my daughter for the first time. She was perfect, tiny, red-faced, screaming at the top of her lungs, and absolutely perfect. Monica was exhausted, but healthy. Everything I'd been terrified about, everything I'd tried to plan for and control, had happened without my control, and it had turned out okay, better than okay. As I held my daughter, this tiny person whose entire future I'd been trying to map out before she was even born, I realized something profound. I couldn't control her life. I couldn't protect her from every possible harm. I couldn't guarantee that every day would be perfect or that nothing bad would ever happen to her. But I could trust. I could trust that the God who'd brought her safely into this world would be with her, with all of us, whatever came next. I didn't need to control tomorrow. I needed to trust. That night, while Monica and the baby slept, I sat in the hospital room and pulled out my phone. I found a notes app and typed those words. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. I stared at them for a long time. I thought about all the spreadsheets, all the contingency plans, all the sleepless nights spent trying to account for every possible variable. And I realized that none of it had actually made me feel more secure. If anything, it had made me more anxious, more fearful, more convinced that disaster was always one miscalculation away. But these words, they offered something different. Not a guarantee that nothing would go wrong, but a promise that I didn't have to carry the weight of the future alone, that someone else held tomorrow, and I could trust him with it. I didn't know yet what it would mean to live that way. I didn't know how to let go of the control I'd been clinging to for so long, but holding my daughter, watching my wife sleep peacefully after bringing new life into the world, I knew I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to be present instead of always being 10 steps ahead. I wanted to learn how to plan responsibly without obsessing anxiously. I wanted to learn how to trust instead of control. That was the beginning. Not of having everything figured out, but of realizing I didn't need to. Someone else had already gone before me into tomorrow, and maybe, just maybe, I could learn to trust him there. If you've read this far, I want to ask you, What are you trying to control right now? What future outcome are you exhausting yourself trying to guarantee? What would it feel like to hear those words for yourself? You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. Leave a comment and tell me, because I'm learning that we're not meant to carry the weight of tomorrow alone. And maybe, like me, you need permission to finally put it down. The first week home with our daughter Emma was nothing like I'd planned. Not that I hadn't tried. I'd read 14 books on newborn care, created feeding schedules, downloaded 3 different baby tracking apps, and set up a detailed system for monitoring everything from diaper changes to sleep patterns. But Emma hadn't read any of my plans. She slept when she wanted to sleep, woke up when she wanted to wake up, and seemed determined to prove that babies couldn't be controlled by spreadsheets and schedules. On the third night home, I was standing in the nursery at 4 a.m., holding a screaming Emma while Monica tried to get a few hours of sleep. I'd fed her, changed her, checked her temperature, tried every soothing technique the books recommended. Nothing worked. She just kept crying. I felt panic rising in my chest. What was I doing wrong? I'd followed all the steps. I'd done everything the experts said to do. Why wasn't it working? What if something was seriously wrong? What if I was missing something critical? My phone was on the dresser and I kept glancing at it, wanting to Google "baby won't stop crying" for the 100th time that week, wanting to find an answer, a solution, something I could control. Then I remembered those words from the hospital. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. I took a deep breath, then another, and instead of reaching for my phone, instead of trying to find the perfect solution, I just held my daughter. I walked with her. I sang, badly, off-key, but I sang. An old hymn I remembered from childhood that I didn't even know I still knew, and slowly, gradually, she calmed down. Not because I'd found the right technique or followed the right steps, she just calmed down, and eventually fell asleep in my arms. As I stood there in the dark nursery, holding my sleeping daughter, I realized something. I couldn't control this. I couldn't guarantee that every time she cried, I'd know exactly what to do. I couldn't predict her needs or schedule her moods or plan out every moment of her life, and that was okay. That was how it was supposed to be. The next morning, Monica found me staring at my laptop in the living room. I had 17 tabs open: baby sleep consultants, pediatrician reviews, articles about infant development milestones. "Nathan," she said gently, sitting down next to me with Emma in her arms, "what are you doing?" "I'm trying to figure out the best approach for sleep training. There are so many different methods, and I want to make sure we choose the right one. The Ferber method says to do graduated extinction, but the chair method suggests—" "Nathan, she's 3 days old." I blinked. "I know, but we need to establish good habits early. If we don't get this right now—" "Honey, we can't get it right. There is no right. There's just doing our best and figuring it out as we go." She paused. "What happened to what you told me at the hospital, about not needing to control everything?" I closed my laptop slowly. She was right. Less than a week after that moment of clarity, I was right back to my old patterns. Trying to control, trying to plan, trying to eliminate all uncertainty and guarantee perfect outcomes. "I don't know how to do this differently," I admitted. "This is how I've always handled things. Research everything. Plan for every possibility. Make sure I'm prepared for anything that could happen." "But how's that working for you?" Monica asked. "Does all that planning make you feel more secure, or does it just give you more things to worry about?" I thought about the 17 tabs open on my laptop, each one offering a different approach, different advice, different warnings about what could go wrong. She was right. The more I researched, the more anxious I became. Every article gave me 5 new things to worry about. "What if I mess this up?" I said quietly. "What if I don't give her what she needs? What if I make the wrong decisions and it affects her whole life?" Monica shifted Emma in her arms and took my hand. "Nathan, you're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. That's part of being human, part of being a parent. But Emma doesn't need perfect parents who never get it wrong. She needs present parents who love her and do their best. And sometimes doing our best means admitting we don't have all the answers and trusting that it'll be okay anyway. Her words echoed what I'd heard in that hospital hallway. Trust, not control, not perfect planning, not guaranteed outcomes. Just trust. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I closed all those tabs. I deleted the baby tracking apps. I put away the books and schedules and detailed plans. Not because planning was bad, but because I'd been using it as a way to try to control the uncontrollable. As a way to convince myself that if I just prepared enough, nothing bad could happen. Instead, I just held my daughter. I watched her sleep. I noticed the way her tiny fingers curled around mine. I was present, actually present, for the first time in days. Over the next week, I started noticing a pattern. Every time I felt anxiety rising, every time I wanted to reach for my phone to research or plan or control, I heard those words again. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. Sometimes I heard them clearly. Sometimes they were just a whisper, but they were there. One morning, I decided to do something about it. I'd been raised going to church, but I'd stopped attending years ago. It had always felt irrelevant to my real life, to the practical concerns of career and money and planning for the future. But maybe I'd missed something. Maybe there was more to faith than I'd understood. I found a church not far from our house, a medium-sized congregation that met in what looked like a converted warehouse. Nothing fancy, nothing intimidating. Monica was supportive, but decided to stay home with Emma. "Go," she said. "See what you find. We'll be here when you get back." Walking into that church felt strange. I hadn't been to a service in over a decade. I sat in the back ready to leave if it felt wrong or fake or like a waste of time. But something about the atmosphere was different from what I remembered. People seemed real, not putting on a show, not performing righteousness, just genuinely gathered together. The pastor, a man in his 50s wearing jeans and a button-down shirt, spoke about worry, about how Jesus told his disciples not to worry about tomorrow, about food or clothes or life itself. "Your heavenly Father knows what you need," he said. "Tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." I sat there feeling like he was speaking directly to me. How had I missed this? I'd read the Bible as a kid, gone through confirmation classes, knew the stories. But I'd somehow missed this central message. Don't worry about tomorrow. Trust that God's got it. After the service, I lingered in the parking lot, not quite ready to leave. An older man approached me. Silver hair, warm smile, the kind of face that suggested he'd lived through some things. "First time here?" he asked. "Is it that obvious?" He laughed. "Only because I've been coming here for 20 years and I know most faces. I'm Thomas. Nathan." We shook hands. I'm trying to figure some things out." "Aren't we all?" Thomas said. "What kind of things?" I don't know why I told him. Maybe because he was a stranger. Maybe because something about him felt safe. But I found myself explaining about my need to control everything, about the constant planning and worrying, about the words I'd heard in the hospital, and how I was trying to figure out what they meant. Thomas listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "I used to be like you," he said. "Spent 20 years as a project manager, convinced that if I could just plan well enough, nothing would ever go wrong. Had contingencies for my contingencies. What changed? I got cancer," he said matter-of-factly. "Stage 3. No family history, no risk factors, just it happened. And suddenly all my plans, all my careful preparation didn't matter. I couldn't control it. I couldn't plan my way out of it. I had to face something that was completely beyond my ability to manage." "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me." He smiled at my surprised expression. Not the cancer itself, obviously, but what it taught me. It taught me that I'd been living under an illusion, the illusion that I was in control, that my life depended on my ability to manage everything perfectly. Cancer shattered that illusion. And underneath it, I found something real. I found faith. "But how do you do it?" I asked. How do you not worry, not try to control things, when there's so much that could go wrong? You practice, Thomas said. Every single day you practice. You catch yourself trying to control things you can't control, and you choose to trust instead. You mess up, you fall back into old patterns, and then you practice again. It's not about being perfect at it. It's about the direction you're moving, away from control, toward trust. What if I can't do it? What if I'm too broken, too set in my ways? Then you're in good company, Thomas said. Every person who's ever tried to follow God has felt that way. That's why it's called faith, not certainty. You don't wait until you're sure you can do it. You just take the next step, trusting that God will meet you there. He pulled out a card from his wallet. This is the men's group that meets here on Tuesday mornings. We're just a bunch of guys trying to figure out what it means to actually live this faith stuff in real life. You'd be welcome to join us. I took the card and thanked him. As I drove home, I thought about what he'd said. Practice. Not perfection, but practice. Moving away from control toward trust, one choice at a time. When I got home, Monica was nursing Emma in the living room. "How was it?" she asked. "Different than I expected," I said, sitting down next to them. "Good different. I think I want to go back." "Yeah?" "Yeah, and maybe I want to try this men's group too. I met someone who seems to understand what I'm dealing with." Monica smiled. "I'm proud of you. This is hard for you, I know, letting go of control. But I can already see it changing you. You're more present, more peaceful." That night, after Emma was asleep and Monica had gone to bed, I sat in the quiet living room and prayed again. Not the desperate prayer of the hospital, but something different. A conversation. "God, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I've spent so long trying to control everything that I don't know how to let go. But I want to learn. I want to trust that you've got tomorrow, that I don't have to carry that weight. Help me, teach me, I'm willing to try." And in the quiet, I felt that same presence I'd felt in the hospital. Not overwhelming, not dramatic, just there. A reassurance that I wasn't alone in this, that someone was with me in the learning, in the struggling, in the slow process of transformation. I opened my laptop and looked at my saved documents folder. Dozens of files, financial projections for the next 40 years, detailed plans for Emma's education, retirement scenarios, emergency fund calculations, all the ways I'd been trying to secure tomorrow. I didn't delete them. They weren't bad in themselves. But I created a new document and titled it simply, Trust. And I wrote those words again. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. That would be my practice. Not eliminating all planning. I was still a financial planner after all, but learning the difference between responsible preparation and anxious control, between wise stewardship and the illusion that my efforts could guarantee outcomes. It was just the beginning. I had so much to learn. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. Not toward having it all figured out, but toward trusting someone who already did. Tuesday morning came faster than I expected. The men's group met at 6:30 a.m., which meant leaving the house while Monica and Emma were still asleep. Part of me wanted to cancel, to stay home and make sure everything was okay. But that was the old pattern talking. The one that said I had to be present for every moment, had to control every situation, had to make sure nothing went wrong. Monica had practically pushed me out the door. "Go," she'd said. "We'll be fine for an hour and a half. I promise the house won't burn down." The church building looked different in the early morning light, less intimidating somehow. I followed the signs to a room in the back, where I found about a dozen men gathered around a large table, coffee mugs in hand, boxes of donuts in the center. Thomas waved me over. "Nathan, glad you came. Everyone, this is Nathan, new dad, first-time visitor last Sunday." The introductions went around the table. Teachers, contractors, a dentist, a guy who worked at the port, a retired Marine. Different ages, different backgrounds, but something in their faces suggested they were all here for similar reasons, trying to figure out what real faith looked like in the mess of actual life. The discussion that morning was about control, specifically about the illusion of control and how we spent so much energy trying to manage things that were never ours to manage in the first place. A man named Steve, the dentist, spoke up. I spent years convinced that if I worked hard enough, planned well enough, did everything right, I could guarantee my kids would turn out well. Good grades, good college, good career, good life. I had it all mapped out. What happened? Someone asked. My oldest son dropped out of college, moved to Montana to work on a ranch, and told me he was happier than he'd ever been. My daughter decided to be a teacher instead of going to medical school like I'd planned. And my youngest came out as gay, which completely destroyed my neat little plans for his future. He paused. And you know what? They're all doing great. They're happy, they're healthy, they're good people. Just not the versions I'd tried to control them into being. How'd you handle that? I asked. Steve laughed, but not unkindly. Poorly at first, I fought it. I tried to convince them to follow my plans. I made everyone miserable, including myself. But eventually, I had to face reality. They weren't mine to control. They never were. God gave them to me to love and guide, not to program and direct. Thomas added, "That's the thing about control. It feels like love, like we're protecting people, keeping them safe. But really, it's about our fear. We control because we're afraid of what might happen if we don't." His words hit home. How much of my constant planning was actually about protecting my family? And how much was about managing my own anxiety? Another man, Carlos, shared about his job. I'm a contractor, and I used to drive myself crazy trying to control every aspect of every project. Weather delays, I'd have a meltdown, materials showing up late, panic, client changing their mind, disaster. I was exhausted all the time, and I was making everyone around me miserable. What changed? I asked. I got sick, really sick. Ended up in the hospital for a week, couldn't work for 2 months. And you know what happened? My crew handled everything. Projects got done. Problems got solved. The world didn't fall apart just because I wasn't micromanaging every detail. Turns out I wasn't as essential as I thought I was. He grinned. Most humbling and freeing thing that ever happened to me. As I listened to these men share their stories, I realized something. I wasn't alone in this struggle. Control wasn't just my issue, it was a human issue. We all wanted to believe we could manage our lives perfectly, prevent all disaster, guarantee good outcomes if we just tried hard enough. After the official discussion ended, Thomas pulled me aside. How are you doing with everything? The new baby, the adjustments? It's hard, I admitted. Emma's 2 weeks old, and I keep catching myself wanting to plan out her entire life. What preschool she'll go to, what college she should attend, what career would be best for her, and I have to keep reminding myself that I can't control any of that I don't even know who she'll become. That's good awareness, Thomas said. Most people don't catch themselves. They just keep trying to control without ever questioning whether they should. The fact that you're noticing the pattern, that's the first step toward changing it. But how do I actually change it? How do I stop? You don't stop completely, you redirect. See, planning isn't bad, being responsible isn't bad, but there's a difference between stewardship and control. Stewardship says, I'll do my part and trust God with the outcome. Control says, the outcome depends entirely on me getting everything right. One is freedom, the other is prison. Stewardship versus control, I repeated, testing the words. How do I know which one I'm doing? Ask yourself, can I rest? If the answer is no, if you can't sleep because you're constantly worried about everything that might go wrong, you're probably trying to control rather than steward. Stewardship allows for rest because it acknowledges that God's got the parts you can't handle. That evening, I tried something new. Instead of spending hours updating our financial projections and planning scenarios, I spent time just being with Monica and Emma. We ordered takeout. We watched a movie. When Emma cried, I picked her up without immediately trying to diagnose what was wrong or find the perfect solution. I just held her. This is nice, Monica said, leaning against me on the couch while Emma slept in my arms. You being here, actually here, not just physically present while your mind is somewhere else. I'm trying, I said. It's harder than I thought it would be. I keep wanting to grab my phone, check things, make plans, control outcomes. But you're not doing it. That's what matters. The next day at work, I faced a real test. One of my biggest clients called in a panic. The market had dropped significantly overnight, and his retirement portfolio had lost value. He wanted to sell everything, move it all to cash, protect what was left. The old Nathan would have panicked with him, would have started running every possible scenario, trying to predict what the market would do next, attempting to control something that was fundamentally uncontrollable. Instead, I took a breath. Tom, I understand you're worried. That's normal when we see our accounts drop. But let's look at this logically, not emotionally. You're not retiring for another 15 years. This is a temporary dip in a long-term strategy. The worst thing we could do is react out of fear and lock in these losses. But what if it gets worse? What if we lose everything? We can't control what the market does. What we can control is our response to it. And historically, the people who panic and sell during downturns are the ones who miss out on the recovery. The people who stay the course, who trust their long-term plan, they're the ones who come out ahead. As I talked him through it, helping him see beyond the immediate panic to the bigger picture, I realized I was giving advice I needed to hear myself. I couldn't control the market. I couldn't guarantee what would happen. But I could make wise decisions and trust that the long-term plan was sound. After the call, my colleague Jennifer stopped by my office. I overheard part of that. You handled it well. Calm, rational, didn't get pulled into his panic. Thanks. I'm learning that panic doesn't actually help anyone. You seem different lately, she observed. More settled somehow, less intense. I thought about how to explain it. I had a baby 2 weeks ago, and it's teaching me that I can't control everything, that maybe I don't need to, she smiled. That's a good lesson. Wish more people learned it. That Sunday, I went back to church. This time, Monica came with me, Emma bundled in a carrier against her chest. We sat in the same back row, and I felt less like an outsider this time, more like I was beginning to belong. The sermon was about Martha and Mary, the story where Martha is busy preparing everything, stressed about getting it all right, while Mary just sits at Jesus' feet. Jesus tells Martha she's worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is necessary. Martha was trying to control the situation, the pastor said, to make everything perfect, to guarantee a good outcome through her efforts. But Mary understood something deeper, that presence matters more than perfection, that being with Jesus, learning from him, trusting him, that's the one necessary thing. Everything else is secondary. I felt Monica squeeze my hand. She knew this was exactly what I needed to hear. After the service, several people introduced themselves. A young couple expecting their first child asked if we'd be interested in joining a new parents group that met every other week. Monica and I exchanged glances and said yes. On the drive home, Emma started crying in her car seat. My first instinct was to pull over, check everything, make sure nothing was wrong. But Monica said, she's fine. She just doesn't like the car seat. We're 5 minutes from home. She can be upset for 5 minutes. It was such a small thing, but it represented something bigger. The idea that I didn't have to fix every problem immediately, that sometimes discomfort was okay, that not every cry needed an immediate solution. I would have pulled over, I admitted. I know, but she's learning she can be upset and be okay. And you're learning you don't have to control every moment. That evening, I sat down with my journal, something the men's group had suggested. I wrote, 3 weeks since Emma was born. 3 weeks since I heard those words in the hospital. I'm not magically fixed. I still catch myself trying to control things, trying to plan out every possibility, trying to guarantee outcomes that aren't mine to guarantee. But I'm learning to recognize it, and more importantly, I'm learning to redirect, not from planning to chaos, but from control to stewardship, from anxiety to trust. It's slow, it's messy, but it's real. Thomas said something today that stuck with me. Stewardship allows for rest. I'm beginning to understand what that means. When I'm trying to control everything, I can never rest, because there's always one more thing to plan, one more scenario to account for, one more potential disaster to prevent. But when I'm stewarding, doing my part and trusting God with the rest, I can actually rest. I can actually be present. I can actually enjoy my life instead of just trying to manage it. I paused, pen hovering over the paper, then wrote one more thing. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. I'm learning what this means. Not all at once, not perfectly, but slowly, surely. I'm learning to let go. Monica appeared in the doorway, Emma asleep in her arms. Coming to bed? Yeah, I said, closing the journal. I'm coming. I looked at my laptop sitting on the desk, at the folders full of projections and plans and scenarios. They'd be there tomorrow. Tonight, I was choosing presence over planning, trust over control, rest over endless preparation. It was just 3 weeks, but I was changing. Slowly, imperfectly, but really. And that was enough. 1 month into fatherhood, I faced my first real financial crisis since Emma was born. Not a personal one. My job was secure. Our savings were intact, but a client emergency that would have sent the old Nathan into a complete tailspin. It was a Thursday afternoon when Margaret called. She was 72, a widow, and I'd been managing her retirement portfolio for 5 years. Her voice was shaking. Nathan, I need you to look at something. My son-in-law says I need to move all my money into cryptocurrency. He says the dollar is going to collapse, and if I don't act now, I'll lose everything. He sent me these articles, these videos, and I'm scared. What if he's right? I felt that familiar surge of anxiety. What if there was something I'd missed? What if there was a legitimate threat I hadn't accounted for? What if my careful planning had left her vulnerable? But then I caught myself. This was the old pattern, catastrophizing, trying to account for every possible disaster scenario, letting fear drive decisions. I took a breath. Margaret, can we meet tomorrow morning? I want to look at these materials with you and talk through this calmly. But what if, Margaret, your money is safe where it is? Nothing is going to collapse overnight. We have time to make thoughtful decisions, not panic-driven ones. After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a moment. The old Nathan would have spent the rest of the day and all night researching cryptocurrency, reading doomsday economic predictions, trying to verify or debunk every claim Margaret's son-in-law had made. But I'd learned something over the past month. Panic research wasn't the same as wise counsel. Trying to control every variable wasn't the same as making sound decisions. Instead, I did my due diligence, spent an hour reviewing legitimate economic analysis, checked Margaret's portfolio allocation, made some notes. Then I closed my laptop and went home to my family. Monica noticed immediately. You're home on time, and you don't look stressed. What happened to my husband? I laughed. I had a client panic today. Wanted to put all her retirement money into crypto because her son-in-law convinced her the economy was collapsing. And in the past, you would have spent all night researching, trying to predict the unpredictable. I know, but I did what was actually useful, reviewed her situation, gathered real information, and then I stopped. I can't control what the economy does. I can't guarantee what will happen tomorrow, but I can give wise counsel based on sound principles. That's my part. The rest isn't mine to carry. She hugged me. I'm proud of you. That's real growth. The meeting with Margaret the next morning went well. I showed her the research, explained the risks, helped her see that her son-in-law's panic was driven by fear, not facts. By the end, she was calm, rational, and confident in her plan. Thank you, she said. Not just for the financial advice, but for the peace. I've had 3 other financial advisors over the years, and they all made me feel like every decision was life or death. You helped me see that I don't have to be afraid. After she left, I sat in my office thinking about what she'd said. How much of my career had I spent making people anxious rather than peaceful? How much had I communicated that their security depended on perfect planning, on controlling every variable, on my expertise in predicting the unpredictable? That Tuesday at the men's group, I shared about the Margaret situation, how I'd handled it differently, how I'd felt the pull to panic research but had resisted. Thomas nodded approvingly. That's stewardship. You did your part, gave wise counsel based on sound principles, and trusted God with the outcome. You didn't try to control what wasn't yours to control. Steve, the dentist, added, "It's interesting how trying to control everything actually makes things worse. When I was trying to control my kids' lives, I was constantly anxious, and they were constantly rebelling. When I let go, when I focused on loving them rather than directing them, everyone got healthier." Carlos spoke up. "I see it on job sites all the time. The contractors who try to control every tiny detail, who panic at every small problem. They're exhausted, their crews are miserable, and honestly, the projects don't turn out any better. The guys who can roll with changes, who trust their teams, who focus on what they can actually influence, they're happier and more successful." A newer member of the group, a man named James, who I'd learned was a high school principal, said, "I'm struggling with this. I have a school full of students, and I feel responsible for all of them. What if I don't do enough? What if I miss warning signs? What if something happens on my watch?" Thomas leaned forward. "James, you're confusing responsibility with control. You're responsible for creating a safe environment, for being attentive, for responding to issues. But you're not responsible for controlling every outcome, for preventing every possible problem. You can't be omniscient or omnipresent. Only God is. Your job is to do your part faithfully and trust Him with what you can't handle." I realized this was exactly what I'd been learning. The difference between my part and God's part. My part was to plan wisely, work diligently, make sound decisions. God's part was the outcomes, the future, the things beyond my control or knowledge. That Sunday, the sermon was about the lilies of the field, how they don't worry about tomorrow, yet God clothes them beautifully. The pastor said something that struck me. Jesus isn't telling you not to work or plan. He's telling you not to be anxious. There's a difference between planning and worrying. Planning is wisdom. Worrying is trying to control what isn't yours to control. Monica and I were in the new parents group now, meeting every other week with 3 other couples who had babies around Emma's age. It was messy. Babies crying during discussions, interrupted conversations, people taking turns holding each other's infants so someone could eat with both hands. But it was also real. We talked about the struggles, the sleepless nights, the overwhelming responsibility, the loss of freedom and spontaneity. But we also talked about the joy, the wonder, the profound privilege of raising these tiny humans. One evening, a couple named Dave and Lisa shared that their son had been diagnosed with a minor heart condition. Nothing life-threatening, but it required monitoring and might need treatment later. "I've been spiraling," Dave admitted, "researching every possible complication, every treatment option, every statistical outcome. I can't sleep, I can't focus at work. I'm driving Lisa crazy." I recognized myself so clearly in his words. That had been me a month ago. That would still be me without what I'd been learning. "I get it," I said. "I really do. I'm a financial planner, so my version is trying to plan out every financial scenario for the next 40 years. But I'm learning something. Trying to control the uncontrollable doesn't actually help. It just makes you more anxious." "So, what do you do instead?" Dave asked. "You do your part. You get good doctors. You follow their advice. You make wise decisions. But then you trust that God's got the parts you can't control. You can research treatments, that's wisdom, but you can't guarantee outcomes, that's control. One brings peace, the other brings panic." Monica added, "And you rest. You actually rest. Because your son needs a present, peaceful father more than he needs an anxious father who's tried to plan for every possibility." That night, as I was putting Emma to bed, well, trying to, since she was wide awake and apparently had no interest in sleep, I had a moment of clarity. I was holding this tiny person whose entire future was unknown. I didn't know if she'd be healthy or sick, happy or sad, successful or struggling. I didn't know what challenges she'd face or what joys she'd experience. I couldn't control any of it. And for the first time, that thought didn't terrify me. Instead, it filled me with something else, a strange peace. Because if I couldn't control her future, that meant it wasn't my burden to carry. I could love her, guide her, do my best for her, but her life was ultimately in God's hands, not mine. You don't need to control tomorrow, I whispered to her, even though she couldn't understand. Someone else has already got that covered. And that's good news, Emma. That's really good news. The next week, I made a decision that would have been unthinkable 2 months ago. I deleted half my financial tracking apps. I unsubscribed from most of those newsletters. I set a rule for myself. I'd check our accounts once a week, not multiple times a day. Monica was shocked. Are you sure? This is such a big change. I'm sure. It's not helping me. It's just feeding the anxiety, giving me more things to worry about. I can stay informed without being obsessed. What brought this on? I thought about how to explain it. I'm realizing that all this monitoring, all this tracking, all this constant checking, it gives me the illusion of control, like if I just stay on top of everything, I can prevent disaster. But I can't. The economy is going to do what it's going to do. Life is going to happen whether I'm checking my apps or not, so I might as well live in peace rather than constant vigilance. That Thursday, something unexpected happened. I got a call from my boss asking if I'd be interested in leading a new team focused on retirement planning for young families. It was a promotion, more responsibility, more money, and it would require more hours. The old Nathan would have said yes immediately. More control over my career, more financial security, more ability to plan and manage our future. But I asked for time to think about it. That evening, Monica and I talked it through. What do you want to do? She asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to say yes, it's a great opportunity. But part of me is afraid that more responsibility will pull me back into old patterns. More stress, less presence, more trying to control everything. But you're not the same person you were 2 months ago, Monica pointed out. Maybe you can handle more responsibility now because you're handling it differently, not trying to control every outcome, just doing your part faithfully. I thought about what Thomas had said about stewardship versus control. This promotion could be stewardship, using my gifts and experience to serve others well, or it could become control, trying to guarantee outcomes through perfect performance. I think I want to say yes, I said slowly, but with boundaries. No working late unless it's truly necessary. No checking email at night. No letting work anxiety steal my presence with you and Emma. If I can do the job within healthy limits, great. If not, it's not worth it. Monica smiled. That sounds like wisdom, and it sounds like trust, trusting that you can take on more without losing what you've gained. The next day, I accepted the position with those conditions. My boss agreed without hesitation. Honestly, Nathan, you've changed recently. You're more effective, more focused, better with clients. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We want leaders who can work sustainably, not burn out in 2 years. At that Sunday after church, Thomas pulled me aside. How are you doing? Really doing? Good, I said, surprised to realize it was true. I mean, I still catch myself trying to control things. I still have moments of anxiety, but I'm recognizing it faster and redirecting quicker. I'm learning to rest, to trust. That's all any of us can do, Thomas said. Keep learning, keep practicing, keep choosing trust over control. You're on the right path, Nathan. Keep walking it. As I drove home with my family, Emma asleep in her car seat, Monica humming along to the radio, I thought about how much had changed in 6 weeks. I wasn't perfect. I still struggled, but I was different. I'd learned that I didn't need to control tomorrow, that someone else already had it handled, and slowly, gradually, I was learning to trust him with it. It wasn't the end of the journey. It was still just the beginning, but it was a good beginning, and for now, that was enough. 2 months into this new way of living, I thought I was getting the hang of it. I'd learned to recognize when I was trying to control versus when I was stewarding. I'd built boundaries around work. I was present with my family. I'd even started sleeping better. Then my mom called with news that shattered my fragile sense of equilibrium. "Nathan, honey, your father and I need to talk to you about something." Her voice had that careful tone that immediately triggered alarm bells. "Can you come over this weekend? Mom, just tell me. What's wrong?" She sighed. "Your dad's been having some health issues. Memory problems, confusion. We went to the doctor and they're running tests. They think it might be early-stage Alzheimer's." The floor dropped out from under me. My dad, my rock-solid, reliable, always-there father, might have Alzheimer's. I felt that old familiar panic rising, the urge to research every possible treatment, plan for every scenario, try to control an outcome that was completely beyond my control. "Nathan, are you there?" "I'm here. I'll come over this weekend. We'll figure this out. We'll find the best doctors, the best treatments. Honey, we don't know anything yet. It might not even be Alzheimer's. The tests won't be back for another week. I just wanted you to know what we're dealing with." And after we hung up, I sat frozen at my desk. Emma was napping, Monica was at a doctor's appointment. I was alone with this news that felt too big, too scary, too uncontrollable. I opened my laptop and my fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct told me to start researching Alzheimer's progression, treatment options, care facilities, financial planning for long-term care. I could spend the next week preparing for every possibility. But then I heard those words again. "You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me." I closed the laptop. Instead, I called Thomas. He answered on the second ring, and I told him everything. The news about my dad, the terror I felt, the overwhelming urge to try to manage and control and plan for every possible outcome. "What are you feeling right now?" he asked. "Scared, helpless. Like I should be doing something, but I don't know what." "Nathan, can I tell you what I learned when I got my cancer diagnosis? The hardest part wasn't the cancer itself. It was the waiting for test results, waiting to know the prognosis, waiting to see if treatment would work. And in that waiting, I had two choices. I could try to control the uncontrollable by researching obsessively and planning for every scenario. Or I could trust that God was already in my future, already knew the outcome, and was already preparing the way. But doing nothing feels irresponsible. Don't I need to be prepared? There's a difference between preparation and obsession. When the results come back, when you know what you're actually dealing with, then you can make informed decisions. But right now, you don't know anything. And trying to prepare for every possibility isn't helpful. It's just a way of trying to manage your anxiety through control. So what do? You pray. You be present with your family. You love your dad while he's here and healthy. You wait for actual information instead of trying to prepare for imagined scenarios. And you trust that God's already been where you're afraid to go. After we hung up, I sat with that advice. It went against every instinct I had. But I recognized the wisdom in it. I didn't know what we were facing yet. Trying to prepare for something that might not even be real was just another form of trying to control tomorrow. That evening, when Monica got home, I told her about my dad. She held me while I cried, really cried for the first time in years. Not trying to fix it or plan around it, just feeling the fear and the grief and the helplessness. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted. "I don't know how to not try to fix it." "You don't have to fix it, honey. You just have to be there, for your dad, for your mom, for yourself. That's all anyone can do." That weekend we drove to my parents' house with Emma. My dad looked the same as always, tall, solid, with that gentle smile that had always made me feel safe. It was hard to imagine anything being wrong. We sat in their living room, and my mom explained what had been happening. Small things at first, forgotten appointments, misplaced keys, repeating the same story twice in one conversation. Then bigger things, getting confused about what day it was, not recognizing their neighbor of 20 years. "The doctor says it could be Alzheimer's," my dad said calmly. Too calmly, like he was talking about someone else. "Or it could be something else. We won't know until the tests come back." I wanted to jump in with plans, with research, with action steps, but I caught myself. Instead, I just asked, How are you feeling about all this? My dad looked surprised by the question. Honestly? Scared. I don't want to lose myself. I don't want to become a burden to your mother. But there's also a strange peace. I've lived a good life. I have a wonderful wife, a son I'm proud of, a granddaughter I'm getting to know. Whatever comes, I'm grateful for what I've had. His peace in the face of uncertainty was profound. Here he was, potentially facing one of the most devastating diagnoses possible, and he was at rest. Not in denial, not pretending it wasn't serious, but genuinely at peace. How? I asked. How are you so calm? Because I realized a long time ago that I'm not in control. God is, and He's been faithful to me for 70 years. Why would I stop trusting Him now? He paused. Nathan, I know you. I know how your mind works. You're probably already trying to figure out how to fix this, how to plan for every possibility. But you can't. And that's okay. You don't have to. But I want to help. I want to do something. Then just be my son. Come visit. Bring Emma. Let me enjoy the time I have while I still have it. That's all I need. On the drive home, I was quiet. Monica glanced over at me. You okay? My dad just taught me more about faith in one conversation than I've learned in 2 months. He's facing something terrifying, and he's at peace. Actually at peace. And here I am, trying to control things that are way less serious, making myself miserable in the process. He's had a lot more practice at this than you have, Monica pointed out. Don't compare your beginning to his middle. Just keep learning. The next week was hard. Every day I had to resist the urge to research Alzheimer's, to plan for worst-case scenarios, to try to prepare for something I didn't even know was real yet. Multiple times a day, I had to remind myself, you don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. At the men's group that Tuesday, I shared what was happening. The response was immediate and supportive. Offers to pray, to help, to just be there. But it was something Carlos said that really hit me. My father had Alzheimer's, he said quietly. Lived with it for 7 years before he passed. And I spent the first 2 years of his diagnosis in complete panic, trying to find cures, trying to slow the progression, trying to control something that couldn't be controlled. I made myself miserable, and I missed out on being present with him while he still knew who I was. What changed? I asked. I finally accepted that I couldn't fix it, that all my research and planning wasn't going to change the outcome. So I stopped trying to control his disease and started just loving him through it. And those last 5 years, even though they were hard, they were also beautiful. Because I was actually there, present with him, not 10 steps ahead trying to manage what was coming. His words stayed with me all week. Was I going to spend this time in panic, trying to control the uncontrollable? Or was I going to be present with my dad, enjoying the time we had while we had it? The test results came back on Friday. My mum called and I could hear relief in her voice even before she spoke. It's not Alzheimer's. It's a vitamin deficiency, B12. Apparently it can cause memory problems and confusion, but it's completely treatable. The doctor said once we get his levels back up, he should be fine. I sat down hard, overwhelmed with relief. Thank God, oh thank God. I know, we were so scared. But Nathan, your father said something beautiful when we got the news. He said, see, God already knew. He was already working on it. We didn't need to be afraid. After we hung up, I sat with that for a long time. For a week, I'd been terrified. For a week, I'd fought the urge to try to control and plan and manage. And all that time, God had already known what it was. He'd already been working on it. My fear hadn't been necessary. My control attempts would have been useless. That Sunday, the pastor preached on Jesus calming the storm, but he focused on something I'd never noticed before. The disciples panic, he said. They wake Jesus up, terrified they're going to die. And Jesus asks them, why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? Now that might seem harsh. They were in a legitimate storm. But here's what Jesus was pointing out. He was in the boat with them. The storm couldn't sink them because the Son of God was right there with them. Their fear was understandable, but it wasn't necessary. They weren't alone in the storm. I felt tears on my face. That had been me all week. Afraid of a storm that might be coming, forgetting that I wasn't in the boat alone, that God was already in my tomorrow, already knew what was coming, already had it handled. After the service, Thomas found me. Heard the good news about your dad. That must be such a relief. It is. But you know what's strange? I'm almost grateful for the scare, because it taught me something I needed to learn. I spent a week practicing trust in a way I never had before, resisting the urge to control, choosing to believe God had it even when I didn't know the outcome. And now I know I can do it. It's not easy, but I can. That's growth, Nathan. Real, hard-won growth. That evening, Monica and I took Emma for a walk in the neighborhood. It was one of those perfect autumn evenings, leaves turning gold, air crisp but not cold. Emma was awake and alert, looking at everything with wide, curious eyes. "I've been thinking," Monica said, "about how much you've changed in the past 2 months. You're still you, still thoughtful, still responsible, still caring. But you're not anxious all the time, you're present. You're actually enjoying life instead of just trying to manage it." "I'm still learning," I said. "This week with my dad showed me that. I still default to wanting to control, to plan, to prepare for every possible disaster. But I'm getting better at catching it, at redirecting." "Do you think you'll ever not struggle with it?" I thought about that. Honestly, no. I think this is probably something I'll deal with my whole life. The urge to control, to guarantee outcomes, to manage tomorrow today. But I'm learning to live with it differently, to recognize it as a temptation rather than a virtue, to redirect it toward trust instead of giving into it. "That's really mature," Monica said. "A lot of people never get there. They spend their whole lives trying to control everything and wondering why they're miserable." We walked in comfortable silence for a while, Emma making little cooing sounds. Then Monica said, "Your dad is amazing, you know. The way he faced that potential diagnosis with peace. That's what I want for us. That's what I want Emma to learn from you. Not how to control life, but how to trust God through it." "I want that too," I said. "And I'm learning that trust isn't passive. It's not just sitting back and hoping everything works out. It's actively doing your part, being responsible, making wise choices, working diligently, and then releasing the outcome. Stewardship with trust. That's what my dad showed me. That's what I want to pass on to Emma." That night I updated my journal. 2 months in, and I'm still learning. This week taught me that I can choose trust even when I'm terrified. Even when everything in me wants to research and plan and control, I can redirect. I can wait. I can be present instead of 10 steps ahead. My dad's diagnosis scare could have sent me into a spiral of anxiety and obsessive planning. 2 months ago it would have, but this time I chose differently. Not perfectly. I still felt the urge to control, but I didn't give in to it, and I survived. More than survived, I was actually able to be there for my parents, to enjoy time with my dad, because I wasn't consumed with trying to manage the future. I'm learning that God really does have tomorrow, that He's already there, already working, already knowing what I'm terrified of. And because He's there, I don't need to be. I can be here now, present in today. That's where life actually happens. That's where love and joy and connection exist. Not in my carefully planned future, but in this messy, uncertain, uncontrollable present. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. I'm learning what that means, and it's changing everything. I closed the journal and looked in on Emma, sleeping peacefully in her crib. She had no idea that her grandfather had just been spared a devastating diagnosis. She didn't know about vitamin deficiencies or Alzheimer's or any of the things that had terrified me this week. She just trusted that her needs would be met, that she was loved, that tomorrow would come and it would be okay. Maybe that was what Jesus meant about becoming like children, not being naive or irresponsible, but having that fundamental trust that someone was taking care of tomorrow, that we could rest in today because tomorrow was already handled. I was learning, slowly, imperfectly, but really, and that was enough. 3 months into this journey, I started noticing something unexpected. Other people were asking me for advice. Not financial advice, that was my job, but advice about anxiety, about control, about how to live with peace in uncertain times. It started with a colleague, Ryan, who'd always seemed to have it all together. He was in his late 20s, ambitious, driven, on the fast track to partnership. One Thursday afternoon, he knocked on my office door. "Nathan, can I talk to you?" "Not about work." I gestured to a chair. "Of course, what's going on?" He sat down, and I could see tension in every line of his body. "I've been having panic attacks. Started about a month ago. Can't sleep, can't focus, constantly worried about everything. My doctor wants to put me on medication. My girlfriend thinks I need therapy, and I don't know what to do." I recognized myself so clearly in his words. "What are you worried about?" "Everything. What if I don't make partner? What if the economy crashes? What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail?" He laughed bitterly. "I know it sounds crazy. I'm doing well. I should be happy. But I can't stop worrying about all the things that could go wrong." "It doesn't sound crazy," I said. "It sounds like you're trying to control tomorrow, and that's an exhausting, impossible job." He looked surprised. "How did you know?" I told him my story. Not all of it. We had limited time. But the key parts. The obsessive planning, the constant anxiety, the moment in the hospital when I'd finally broken. The words I'd heard, "You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me." "So you just stopped worrying?" he asked skeptically. "No, I'm still learning not to worry. But I learned something important. Trying to control tomorrow doesn't actually make tomorrow more secure. It just makes today more miserable. The question isn't whether you plan. Planning is good. The question is whether you can rest. If you can't rest, if you're constantly anxious, you're probably trying to control things that aren't yours to control. But how do I stop? How do I let go? You start by recognizing that you can't guarantee outcomes. You can do your best, make wise choices, work diligently, but you can't control what happens. And once you accept that, really accept it, you can start to redirect. Instead of trying to control everything, you start trusting that someone bigger than you has got the parts you can't handle. Ryan was quiet for a moment. "You're talking about God." "I am. And I know that might not be your thing. But here's what I've learned. Faith isn't a crutch for weak people. It's recognition of reality. Reality is that we're not actually in control, no matter how much we plan. Faith is just being honest about that, and trusting that someone else is." He left my office looking thoughtful. I didn't know if anything I'd said would help, but I'd been honest, and I realized something. Helping him had helped me. Articulating what I'd learned, putting it into words for someone else, had clarified it in my own mind. That evening, Monica told me she'd invited a couple from the new parents group over for dinner. "Dave and Lisa," she said. "Remember them? Their son with the heart condition? They're really struggling right now." Dave and Lisa arrived looking exhausted. Their son, Connor, was 6 months old now and doing better medically, but the stress of the situation had taken its toll. Over dinner, Lisa opened up. "I can't sleep. Every time Connor makes a sound, I'm up checking on him. I've been tracking his heart rate, his breathing, everything. My phone is full of medical apps. I know it's probably excessive, but what if I miss something? What if something happens because I wasn't paying attention?" Dave added, "And I've been working extra hours, trying to build up our savings in case we need more medical interventions. But I'm never home, and Lisa's handling everything alone, and we're both exhausted and snapping at each other." I glanced at Monica, who gave me an encouraging nod. "Can I share something with you both? Something I've been learning?" They nodded, and I told them about my journey, about trying to control Emma's entire future before she was even born, about the panic when things didn't go according to plan, about learning to distinguish between stewardship and control. "The thing is," I said, "your vigilance isn't actually protecting Connor. The doctors are monitoring him. He's getting good care. What he needs now isn't perfect monitoring. It's parents who are present and healthy, and you can't be that if you're exhausted from trying to control every variable. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. But what if something happens? What if we're not prepared? Monica spoke up gently. Lisa, when our pediatrician told us Emma was healthy, Nathan asked her about SIDS, about all these rare conditions, about every possible thing that could go wrong. And you know what she said? She said, "You can't live your life preparing for every tragedy that might happen. You'll make yourself sick with worry, and you'll miss the joy of actually raising your daughter." "But it's hard," Lisa said. "It's so hard to not worry when you love someone so much." "It is hard," I agreed. "I'm not going to tell you it's easy, but I'm learning that love and control aren't the same thing. Real love means doing your part, which you're doing. You're taking care of Connor, and then trusting God with the rest. Control means trying to guarantee outcomes, which is impossible and will destroy you trying." Dave asked, "How do you actually do that? How do you trust when everything in you wants to control?" "You practice. Every day, multiple times a day, you catch yourself trying to control and you redirect. You ask yourself, is this my part or God's part? My part is to be a good father, to make wise decisions, to love my daughter. God's part is tomorrow, outcomes, things beyond my knowledge or power. And slowly over time you build trust muscles." After they left, Monica hugged me. "You were really good with them. You gave them exactly what they needed. Not judgment, not easy answers, but real hope that there's another way to live." "I just told them what I'm learning," I said. "And honestly, helping them helped me. It reminded me how far I've come. 3 months ago, I was where they are, terrified, trying to control everything, making myself miserable. Now I'm not perfect, but I'm different." The next Tuesday at the men's group, Thomas announced that he was starting a new small group focused specifically on anxiety and control issues. "I've noticed this is something a lot of men struggle with," he said. "Not all of us, but many. And I think having a focused space to work through it could be valuable." I signed up immediately, along with James, the high school principal, and a few others. Our first meeting was the following week. That week, something unexpected happened at work. My new team, the one focused on retirement planning for young families, landed a major client. A tech company wanted us to provide financial planning services for all their employees as a benefit. It was huge, potentially transformative for our firm, but it also meant more work, more pressure, more responsibility. The old Nathan would have panicked, would have started working 16-hour days trying to guarantee perfect outcomes. Instead, I gathered my team and said, "This is amazing. This is also a lot. We're going to need to scale up, delegate well, and maintain healthy boundaries, because if we burn out trying to do this perfectly, we'll fail anyway. So let's plan wisely, work diligently, and trust that if we do our part well, the outcome will be what it needs to be." My team looked surprised, but relieved. One woman, Sarah, said, "Thank you. I was afraid you were going to expect us to kill ourselves on this." "No," I said. "Sustainable excellence, not burnout brilliance. That's what we're aiming for." Jennifer, my boss, pulled me aside afterward. "That was good leadership. The old approach in this firm has been to throw everything at major clients, work weekends, sacrifice family time, whatever it takes. But we're learning that's not sustainable. People burn out, quality suffers, we lose good employees. Your approach is smarter." That Sunday, the sermon was about the manna in the wilderness, how God provided for the Israelites daily, but they could only gather enough for one day. If they tried to hoard it, it would rot. God was teaching them to trust daily, the pastor said, not to store up enough security for the next month or year, but to trust that he'd provide again tomorrow. That's hard for us. We want to have it all figured out, all secured, all guaranteed. But God asks us to trust him one day at a time. I thought about my financial planning. My profession was literally helping people store up for tomorrow. But there was a difference between wise preparation and anxious hoarding, between saving responsibly and trying to guarantee security through perfect planning. After the service, a young couple approached me. They'd heard through the new parents group that I'd been helping people with anxiety and control issues. "We're not parents yet," the husband said, "but we're trying to get pregnant and it's not happening. And I'm spiraling, planning out fertility treatments we might need, calculating costs, trying to control every variable. My wife says I'm making it worse." I invited them to coffee the next day. Over lattes, I shared my story again. I was getting good at telling it, at distilling the lessons I'd learned into something useful for others. "The thing about control," I said, "is that it feels like love, like you're being responsible, protecting your future family, but it's actually fear disguised as responsibility. Real responsibility is doing your part, seeing good doctors, making healthy choices. But control is trying to guarantee outcomes that you can't guarantee." "So what do we do?" the wife asked. "You trust. You do what's in your power, get medical help if you need it, make wise choices, and then you release the outcome. You can't control whether you get pregnant, when you get pregnant, or how it happens, but you can control whether you're present and peaceful in the process, or anxious and miserable." The next meeting of Thomas's anxiety group was powerful. 6 of us gathered and we went around sharing our control struggles. James talked about trying to prevent every possible problem at his school. Carlos shared about how he still caught himself trying to micromanage job sites. A newer member, Peter, talked about health anxiety, constantly checking symptoms, convinced every ache was something serious. Thomas asked us each to identify one area where we were trying to control something we couldn't control. "And then," he said, "I want you to practice releasing it, not ignoring it, not being irresponsible, but recognizing what's yours to do and what's God's to handle." For me, it was clear. I was still trying to control Emma's development, comparing her to milestones, worrying if she was on track, planning her educational future even though she was only 3 months old. "What would it look like to release that?" Thomas asked. "It would look like enjoying her for who she is right now, instead of worrying about who she'll become, trusting that God made her uniquely and has a plan for her that doesn't depend on my perfect parenting." Over the next week, I practiced. Every time I caught myself comparing Emma to developmental charts or worrying about her future, I stopped. I reminded myself, my part is to love her, care for her, be present with her, her development, her future, who she'll become. That's God's part. It was harder than I expected, but it was also freeing. Instead of analyzing every sound she made or worrying about whether she was meeting milestones, I just enjoyed her. I played with her. I watched her discover her hands with wonder. I was present. Monica noticed, "You're different with her lately, more relaxed, more playful." "I'm practicing releasing control," I said, "trusting that I don't have to manage every aspect of her development, that God's got her future, and my job is just to love her well today." That Friday, Ryan, my colleague who'd had the panic attacks, stopped by my office again. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for what you said a couple weeks ago. I've been thinking about it, and I started going to therapy and also to church. Not because I'm suddenly super religious, but because I realized you were right. I was trying to control things I couldn't control, and it was destroying me." "How's it going?" I asked. "Better, not perfect. I still catch myself spiraling, but I'm learning to recognize it faster, and I'm learning that maybe I don't have to have it all figured out. Maybe that's okay." "That's huge," I said. "Real growth." After he left, I sat at my desk feeling grateful. 3 months ago, I'd been where he was, drowning in anxiety, trying to control everything, making myself miserable. Now I was helping others find the same freedom I'd found. Not because I was perfect at it, but because I'd walked the path and could point the way. That evening, my parents came over for dinner. My dad was doing great. His B12 levels were back to normal. His memory was sharp, no lingering effects from the deficiency. Watching him hold Emma, watching the joy on his face, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Dad," I said, "I want to thank you for something. When you were facing that potential Alzheimer's diagnosis, you had this peace, this trust. It taught me more about faith than anything else could have. You showed me what it looks like to not need to control tomorrow." He smiled. "Nathan, I've been watching you these past few months. You're different, more present, less anxious. Whatever you're learning, keep learning it. It's making you a better man, a better father, a better son." That night, I updated my journal. 3 months in, and I'm starting to see the ripple effects. As I've learned to trust instead of control, it's not just changing me, it's affecting everyone around me. Monica's more peaceful, my team at work is healthier. I'm able to help others who are struggling with the same issues I struggled with. I'm learning that transformation isn't just personal. When we change, we create space for others to change. When we trust, we give others permission to trust. When we release control, we show others that it's possible to live differently. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. I say these words to myself multiple times a day. Sometimes I believe them fully. Sometimes I'm still learning to believe them. But they're changing me, slowly and surely, into someone who can rest, someone who can be present, someone who can trust. I'm not where I want to be yet. I still catch myself trying to control things. I still have moments of anxiety, but I'm not where I was. And that's enough. That's more than enough. It's everything. I closed the journal and walked to Emma's room. She was asleep, one tiny fist curled near her face. I stood there watching her breathe, feeling that familiar urge to plan her future, to protect her from everything, to control every variable. And then I let it go. I couldn't control her future. I couldn't guarantee her life would be easy or that nothing bad would ever happen to her. But I could trust that the God who'd brought her into this world would be with her every step of her journey. I could trust that he loved her even more than I did. I could trust that he'd already gone ahead into her tomorrow. "You don't need to control tomorrow," I whispered to her sleeping form, "and neither do I. Someone else already has that covered." And in the quiet of that moment, I felt peace. Not the absence of all worry, not the guarantee that nothing would ever go wrong, but the deep, settled peace that comes from knowing you're not alone, that someone bigger than you is handling what you can't handle, that someone has already gone ahead, and that changes everything. 4 months into this journey, I faced a test I hadn't seen coming, the temptation to control other people's transformation. It started innocently enough. Ryan, my colleague who'd been dealing with panic attacks, asked if I'd be willing to meet with him regularly, not just once, but as an ongoing mentorship. I said yes, honored that he'd ask. But within a few weeks, I found myself frustrated. Ryan would make progress, then backslide. He'd practice trust for a few days, then fall back into obsessive planning. He'd seem to get it, then completely miss the point in our next conversation. One Tuesday morning, I vented to Thomas at the men's group. "I don't understand. I'm giving him everything I learned. I'm sharing what worked for me. But he's not applying it. He's not changing." Thomas smiled knowingly. "Nathan, how long did it take you to change?" "I'm still changing. It's been 4 months and I still struggle." "Exactly. So why do you expect Ryan to transform overnight? Why do you think you can control his journey?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I was doing it again. I'd learned not to control my circumstances, not to control my future, but now I was trying to control someone else's growth, someone else's timeline, someone else's transformation. "I just want to help him," I said defensively. "I know, but there's a difference between helping and controlling. Helping is offering what you've learned and letting him take what he needs. Controlling is expecting him to follow your path exactly on your timeline. You can't manage his transformation any more than you could manage Emma's development." I sat with that uncomfortable truth. I'd been treating Ryan like a project, like something I could fix if I just gave him the right information in the right order. But he was a person on his own journey, and I couldn't control his pace or his path. That evening, I apologized to Ryan. "I've been putting pressure on you to change faster, to get this quicker. That's not fair. This is your journey, not mine. I can share what I've learned, but I can't walk the path for you." He looked relieved. "I've been feeling like I'm disappointing you, like I'm not getting it fast enough. You're not disappointing me, and there's no fast enough. Everyone's timeline is different. I'm learning that I need to let go of controlling your process, just like I had to let go of controlling my circumstances. It was a humbling lesson. I was still learning about control, just in new contexts. That week, Monica and I hit a rough patch in our marriage. Nothing catastrophic, just the normal strain of new parenthood compounded by my work stress and her exhaustion. We were snapping at each other, miscommunicating, not connecting. The old Nathan would have tried to fix it immediately, would have created a plan, scheduled date nights, made lists of relationship goals. And honestly, part of me wanted to do exactly that. Instead, I just talked to her. I feel like we're disconnected. I don't want to make a big production out of fixing it, but I want us to be okay. What do you need? She started crying. I just need you to be here, not planning our relationship, not managing my emotions, just here, present, like you've learned to be with Emma. I can do that, I said, and I held her while she cried, not trying to fix anything, not trying to solve the problem, just being there. The next few days, I practiced presence with Monica in a way I never had before. Not trying to control her mood or our dynamic, just being attentive, available, honest. And slowly we reconnected. Not because I managed it, but because I stopped trying to manage it. At church that Sunday, the pastor talked about the book of Job, about how Job's friends tried to explain his suffering, tried to fit it into their neat theological boxes, tried to control the narrative. Sometimes, the pastor said, the most loving thing we can do is sit with someone in their pain without trying to fix it, explain it, or manage it. Presence is more powerful than solutions. I thought about Ryan, about Monica, about all the ways I'd been trying to control other people's experiences, and I realized this was another layer of the same issue. I'd learned I couldn't control circumstances. Now I was learning I couldn't control people. Not their growth, not their emotions, not their journeys. That Tuesday, at Thomas's anxiety group, I shared this realization. I thought I'd learned about control, but I was just transferring it from circumstances to people. I can't control Ryan's transformation any more than I can control Emma's development or Monica's emotions. I have to let people be on their own journeys. James, the principal, nodded vigorously. That's my biggest struggle at school. I want to fix every student, solve every problem, control every outcome, but I can't. I can create a good environment, I can be available, I can offer resources, but I can't make students learn or grow or change. That's on them, Carlos added. Same with my crews. I used to think good leadership meant controlling everything. Now I'm learning it means creating space for people to do good work, then trusting them to do it. Peter, who struggled with health anxiety, said, I'm dealing with this with my wife. She has chronic pain, and I keep trying to research solutions, find the perfect treatment, fix her, but she just needs me to be there, to not try to manage her experience. We spent the rest of the session talking about this, the difference between helping and controlling, between presence and management, between offering and insisting. It was powerful, this realization that we were all learning the same lesson in different contexts. That week, something significant happened with Dave and Lisa, the couple whose son had the heart condition. Lisa called Monica in tears. Connor needed surgery. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but serious enough to be scary. Monica asked if I'd be willing to meet with Dave. He was spiraling, she said, trying to research every possible complication, every potential outcome, making himself sick with worry. Dave and I met for coffee. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, hands shaking as he held his mug. I can't stop researching, he admitted. I've read every medical journal article about this procedure. I've joined online support groups. I've calculated the statistical outcomes, and I'm more terrified than when I started. That's because you're trying to control something you can't control, I said gently. Research feels productive, feels like you're doing something, but at a certain point, it's not helping. It's just feeding your anxiety. But what if I miss something? What if there's something I should know, some question I should ask, some risk I should be aware of? Dave, you have good doctors. They know more than you ever will, even with all your research. Your job isn't to become an expert on pediatric cardiology. Your job is to trust the experts, make informed decisions, and be present with your son and your wife. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to just trust when so much is at stake. I told him about my dad's potential Alzheimer's diagnosis, about the week I'd spent fighting the urge to research and plan and control, about learning that trying to prepare for every possibility wasn't helpful. It was just another form of trying to manage the unmanageable. The thing that helped me, I said, was realizing that God was already in my dad's future, already knew the outcome, already was working. My fear and my research weren't going to change that, so I could either exhaust myself trying to control something I couldn't control, or I could trust that someone bigger than me had it handled. But I'm not religious, Dave said. I don't know if I believe in God. That's okay, you don't have to have it all figured out spiritually, but can you at least acknowledge that you're not in control, that no amount of research or planning will guarantee the outcome you want, that some things are just beyond your power to manage? He was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. Yeah, I can acknowledge that. I hate it, but I can acknowledge it. That's the first step, accepting reality. And reality is that Connor's surgery is going to happen regardless of how much you research. Your anxiety won't make it safer. Your exhaustion won't prevent complications. What Connor needs from you is a dad who's present, who's rested, who can be there for him before and after the surgery. Not a dad who's so consumed with trying to control the outcome that he's useless when his son actually needs him. Dave's eyes filled with tears. You're right. God, you're right. I'm so focused on trying to prevent disaster that I'm not actually there for my family. So what's one thing you can do differently today? He thought about it. Close the medical tabs on my computer. Leave the support groups. Stop researching. Good. And what's one thing you can do for your family? Take Lisa to dinner. Give her a break from worry. Just be together. That sounds like stewardship. You're doing your part. Being present, being supportive, and trusting that the medical team will do their part. That's all anyone can do. After Dave left, I sat in the coffee shop for a while, reflecting. A year ago, I couldn't have had that conversation. I would have been Dave, drowning in research, trying to control the uncontrollable. But 4 months of learning to trust had changed me. Not perfectly, not completely, but really. Connor's surgery was scheduled for the following week. Monica and I went to the hospital on the day of the procedure, sitting with Dave and Lisa during the 3-hour wait. Dave was nervous, but calmer than I'd expected. I took your advice, he told me. I stopped researching. I talked to the doctors, asked my questions, and then I stopped. And you know what? I slept last night, actually slept. First time in weeks. That's huge. I said. I'm still scared, but I'm not drowning in the fear. There's a difference. The surgery went well. Connor came through beautifully, and the doctor said the repair was successful. Watching Dave and Lisa hold their son afterward, seeing the relief and joy on their faces, I felt grateful that I'd been able to walk with them through it. That Sunday, Pastor mentioned that the church was starting a support group for people dealing with medical crises. They were looking for someone to lead it. After the service, I found myself approaching him. I might be interested in helping with that group, I said. I'm not a medical professional or a trained counselor, but I've learned some things about managing anxiety in uncertain situations, and I've walked with several people through health scares. He looked thoughtful. You know, Nathan, I've noticed how much you've grown these past few months. You'd be good at this, but it's a commitment. Are you sure you have the bandwidth? I thought about it. The old Nathan would have said yes immediately, would have taken on too much, would have tried to do it all perfectly, but I'd learned something about healthy boundaries. Let me talk to Monica and pray about it. I'll get back to you this week. That evening, Monica and I discussed it. I think you'd be great at it, she said. You have real experience to share, but you also need to make sure you're not overcommitting. What would it require? Meeting twice a month, probably 2 hours each time, plus some preparation, maybe 4 to 6 hours total per month. Can you do that without sacrificing family time or work responsibilities? I thought about my schedule. Yeah, I think so, especially if I cut back on some other things. I've been spending a lot of time on financial projections for our personal accounts, way more than necessary. I could redirect that time toward this. She smiled. I love that. You're recognizing that time spent trying to control our financial future isn't as valuable as time spent helping others learn what you've learned. That's exactly it. I'm learning that stewardship isn't just about managing resources. It's about using my time, my experiences, my growth to serve others, not to control them, not to fix them, but to walk with them. I emailed the pastor that week and agreed to co-lead the medical crisis support group. The first meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks out. At the next men's group, I shared about the decision. Thomas smiled. That's a significant step. You're moving from being someone who receives help to someone who offers it. But remember, you can't control people's healing any more than you could control your own circumstances. Your job is to share what you've learned and create space for people to process, not to fix them. I'm learning that, I said. The hard way, but I'm learning. That Friday evening, my parents came over for dinner again. My dad pulled me aside, while Monica and my mom were in the kitchen with Emma. Nathan, your mother and I have been talking. We're getting older, and we want to make sure our affairs are in order. We'd like you to help us do some financial planning, retirement, estate planning, healthcare directives, all of it. The old Nathan would have jumped at this, would have seen it as a chance to control their future, to prevent every possible problem, to manage every variable. But I'd learned something about boundaries. Dad, I'd love to help, but I also think it's important that you work with a financial planner who isn't your son. Because if I'm managing your finances, I'm going to be tempted to make it about managing my anxiety, about losing you, rather than about what's actually best for you. He looked surprised, then thoughtful. That's really mature, Nathan. You're right. We should have objective advice, but maybe you could still be involved, just not as the primary planner. I can do that. I can help you find a good planner, be part of the conversations, offer input, but someone else should be driving the process. That way I can be your son, not your financial manager. Later, Monica said, I'm proud of you, setting that boundary, recognizing where your role should be and where it shouldn't. That's real growth. That night I journaled 4 months in, and I'm still learning new layers of this. I thought I'd learned about not controlling circumstances. Then I learned about not controlling people's growth. Then about not controlling outcomes. Now I'm learning about boundaries, about recognizing where my role ends and where other people's roles begin. I can't control Ryan's transformation. I can't control Monica's emotions. I can't control Connor's surgery outcome. I can't control my parents' aging process, and that's okay. That's how it should be. My part is to be present, to offer what I've learned, to walk alongside people, to do my work faithfully, to love well, to show up. But the outcomes, the timing, the results, those aren't mine to control. They never were. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. I'm learning this applies to more than just my own tomorrow. It applies to everyone's tomorrow. I can't control other people's futures any more than I can control my own. And learning to release that, learning to let people be on their own journeys, that's freedom, for them and for me. I'm learning that real love doesn't try to manage people. Real love trusts them, supports them, and lets them walk their own paths, even when it's scary. Even when I want to fix things, even when I think I know what's best. Trust means releasing control of other people's journeys too. As I closed the journal, I heard Emma crying from her room. I went to her, picked her up, held her. She was 4 months old now, developing her own personality, her own preferences, her own way of being in the world. I can't control who you'll become, I whispered to her. I can't manage your future or guarantee your happiness or prevent all pain. But I can love you, I can be here, I can do my part. And I can trust that the God who made you has a plan for you that's better than anything I could design. She looked up at me with those wide, trusting eyes, and I realized that's what trust looked like. Not having all the answers, not controlling all the outcomes, just being present, being loved, and believing that someone bigger than us had it all handled. I was learning, still learning, and I would probably always be learning, but that was okay. Because the journey itself was teaching me what I needed to know. You don't need to control tomorrow, not yours, not anyone else's. Just trust. Just be present. Just do your part and let God handle the rest. 5 months into this journey, everything I'd been learning got tested in ways I never imagined. It started with a phone call from Jennifer, my boss. "Nathan, we need to talk. Can you come to my office?" The tone in her voice made my stomach drop. When I got there, she gestured for me to close the door and sit down. "The firm is restructuring," she said without preamble. "We're eliminating the young family's retirement division. It's not about performance. You and your team have been excellent. It's about market pressures and corporate strategy. I'm sorry, Nathan. We're letting you go." The words seemed to come from far away. Letting me go. Laid off. After I'd just taken the promotion. After I'd built this team. After everything. "When?" I managed to ask. "End of the month. We're offering a decent severance package. 3 months salary plus benefits continuation. But I know this is a shock. I'm really sorry." I walked out of her office in a daze, made it to my car before the panic really hit. What were we going to do? How would we pay the mortgage? What about Emma? What about health insurance? I'd just convinced Monica we were stable enough for her to consider cutting back her hours. Now we'd be living on one income, her income, with a baby and a mortgage and no security. My first instinct was to go into crisis mode, update my resume immediately, start networking frantically, apply to hundreds of jobs, create contingency plans for every possible scenario, figure out how to control this situation, manage the outcome, guarantee we'd be okay. But then I heard those words again. "You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me." I sat in my car in the parking lot and I prayed. Not a calm, peaceful prayer, a desperate, raw prayer. "God, I don't understand this. I've been learning to trust you. I've been doing things differently, and now I'm losing my job. This doesn't make sense. But I don't know what else to do except trust you. So I'm trusting you, even though I'm terrified, even though I don't see how this will work out. I'm choosing to trust." I drove home and told Monica. She was shocked, scared, but also surprisingly calm. "Okay," she said. "We'll figure this out. We have savings. We have 3 months of severance. We're going to be okay. But what if I can't find another job? What if this takes longer than 3 months? What if—" She stopped me. "Nathan, listen to yourself. You're catastrophizing. You're trying to predict every worst-case scenario instead of dealing with what's actually in front of us. Let's focus on what we can control today. You can update your resume today. You can reach out to your network today. But you can't control when you'll find a new job or what it will be. You can only do your part and trust." It was surreal, having her repeat back to me the things I'd been learning, but she was right. I was falling back into old patterns, trying to control the uncontrollable. That evening I called Thomas. He listened as I vented my fear and confusion. Then he said something that shifted everything. "Nathan, I lost my job twice in my career. Both times felt like disasters. Both times turned out to be gifts. The first time led me to a better position at a better company. The second time led me to start my own business, which gave me the flexibility to care for my wife when she got sick. At the time, I thought God was punishing me. Looking back, I see He was redirecting me. Sometimes what looks like loss is actually a door opening. But what if that's not the case this time? What if this is just bad? Then it's bad, and God will be with you in the bad. Nathan, you've been teaching people that trust doesn't mean everything works out the way we want. It means God is with us, whatever happens. Now you get to live what you've been teaching. I know it's hard, but this is where faith gets real. The next Tuesday at the men's group, I shared about losing my job. The response was overwhelming, offers to help, to network, to provide connections. But it was what James said that really struck me. "You know what's interesting? 5 months ago, losing your job would have destroyed you. You would have spiraled into panic, tried to control every variable, made yourself sick with anxiety. But listening to you now, you're scared, but you're not drowning. You're trusting. That's transformation, Nathan, real transformation. He was right. I was scared, but I wasn't falling apart. I was anxious, but I wasn't trying to control everything. I was in a genuinely difficult situation, but I was still choosing trust. Over the next few weeks, I did what I could, updated my resume, reached out to contacts, applied to positions, had interviews, but I also practiced trust. I didn't check job boards obsessively. I didn't spend every waking moment researching and planning. I was present with my family. I continued going to church, to the men's group, to the anxiety support group. And I started leading the medical crisis support group with Pastor Michael. Our first meeting had 8 people, some dealing with cancer, some with chronic illnesses, some with sick children. We sat in a circle in the church basement, and I shared my story. Not about medical issues, but about learning to trust in uncertainty. I'm not a medical professional, I said. I can't tell you about treatments or prognoses. But I've learned something about living in uncertainty without letting fear control you. And right now, I'm practicing what I'm teaching. I just lost my job, and I'm scared about the future. But I'm learning that fear doesn't have to drive our decisions, that we can do our part and trust God with the rest. A woman named Karen, who was battling breast cancer, said, "Thank you for being honest about your own struggle." So many people in these support groups have it all together, or at least pretend to. It helps to know that even the person leading is learning. Over the following weeks, that group became a source of strength for me, as much as I hoped I was for them. We shared our fears, our struggles, our small victories. We prayed for each other. We reminded each other that God was with us, whatever we were facing. 3 weeks after losing my job, I got a call from a firm I'd interviewed with. They wanted to offer me a position, better title, better pay, more flexibility than my previous job. It was almost too good to be true. "When can you start?" the hiring manager asked. "I need to talk to my wife," I said. "Can I call you back tomorrow?" That evening, Monica and I discussed it. "It's a great opportunity," she said. "Why do you seem hesitant?" "I don't know. Something feels off. Like maybe I'm supposed to wait, supposed to explore other options, or maybe I'm just being paranoid. Or maybe you're learning to pay attention to that inner sense, instead of just jumping at the first opportunity out of fear," Monica suggested. "Why don't you pray about it? Ask God if this is the right move." I prayed that night, not asking for a sign or a clear answer, just asking for wisdom. And I felt something I couldn't quite explain, a sense of unease about the position. Nothing concrete, nothing I could point to, just a feeling that this wasn't right. The next day, I called them back and declined. The hiring manager was shocked. "Are you sure this is an excellent offer?" "I'm sure. I appreciate the opportunity, but I don't think it's the right fit." Monica supported the decision, even though it meant turning down security. "I trust your judgment, and I trust that God's got something else in mind." 2 days later, I got a call from an old colleague, Michael, who'd left our firm years ago to start his own financial planning practice. "And Nathan, I heard about the layoff. I've been thinking I'm looking to bring on a partner, someone who shares my values, who can help me grow the practice. Would you be interested in talking about it?" We met for coffee, and as he described his vision, I felt that sense of rightness I hadn't felt with the other job. His practice focused on serving people with modest means, middle-class families trying to plan responsibly, not wealthy clients seeking to maximize returns. He valued work-life balance, sustainable practices, serving rather than just profiting. "I can't pay you what you were making," he admitted, "at least not at first, but there's partnership equity, flexibility, the chance to build something meaningful. And honestly, after watching you these past few months, seeing how you've changed, I think you'd be perfect for this." "How have I changed?" I asked, curious. "You're calmer, more present, less driven by fear. I remember you used to be so intense, so anxious about everything. Now there's a peace about you. That's what I want in a partner, someone who can help clients find financial security without making them anxious about it. I talked to Monica that evening. The salary was less, but the partnership opportunity was significant. The flexibility would allow me to continue the support group, to be more present with Emma, to live the way I'd been learning to live. What does your gut tell you? Monica asked. It feels right. It feels like where I'm supposed to be. Then I think you should do it. I accepted Michael's offer the next day, and I felt peace about it. Not certainty that everything would work perfectly, but peace that I was making the right decision for the right reasons. At the men's group, Thomas smiled when I shared the news. You turned down the safe option to take the risky one. 5 months ago, you couldn't have done that. You would have grabbed the security even if it wasn't right. Now you're trusting your gut, trusting God's guidance, taking the risk. That's faith in action. The medical crisis support group heard the news too, and Karen said, "You've been teaching us to trust in uncertainty. Now we got to watch you do it. That means more than any lesson could." My last day at my old firm was bittersweet. Ryan stopped by my office. "I wanted to thank you before you leave, for everything you've taught me. About anxiety, about control, about trust. I'm still learning, still struggling, but I'm different because of you." "You're different because you did the work," I said. "I just pointed the direction. But Ryan, can I tell you something? Keep learning, keep practicing. This isn't a one-time fix, it's a lifetime journey. You're going to have setbacks, that's normal. Just keep choosing trust over and over again." Sarah, from my team, gave me a card signed by everyone. "You changed the culture here," she said. "You showed us we didn't have to kill ourselves to be successful. Even though the division is ending, what you built, that approach, that philosophy, it's spreading. People are paying attention." Starting at Michael's firm felt both exciting and terrifying. I was trading security for opportunity, guaranteed income for potential partnership, established structure for building something new. Every day, I had to practice trust. Every day I had to resist the urge to control outcomes I couldn't control. But I also found joy in the work. Michael's clients were people I could genuinely help. Young families trying to save for college, middle-aged couples planning for retirement, elderly people managing fixed incomes. I wasn't just maximizing wealth. I was helping people find security without anxiety. I was teaching them what I'd learned. Plan wisely, work diligently, trust deeply. One afternoon, I met with a new client, a man named Brian, who reminded me of myself 6 months ago. Anxious, controlling, with 17 spreadsheets tracking every financial variable. "I need to make sure we're prepared for everything," he explained, showing me his elaborate planning system. "What if the market crashes? What if I lose my job? What if we have unexpected medical expenses? What if—" I stopped him gently. "Brian, can I ask you something? Does all this planning make you feel secure?" He paused. "No. Actually, it makes me more anxious. Every time I plan for one scenario, I think of 3 more things that could go wrong. That's because you're trying to control the uncontrollable, and I know because I used to do exactly what you're doing. I had the spreadsheets, the scenarios, the endless planning. It didn't make me secure. It made me miserable. So what changed?" I told him my story. About the hospital, about Emma's birth, about learning to trust, about losing my job 5 weeks ago, and how I'd practiced choosing faith over fear. "You lost your job 5 weeks ago." He looked shocked. "But you seem so calm." "I'm not always calm. I still have moments of fear. But I've learned that my security doesn't come from having everything figured out. It comes from trusting that someone bigger than me has got what I can't handle. So I do my part, plan responsibly, work diligently, make wise choices, but I don't try to guarantee outcomes. I trust." By the end of the meeting, Brian looked lighter. "I want what you have, that peace. How do I get it? You practice. Every day you catch yourself trying to control things you can't control, and you redirect. You do your part and release the rest. It's not easy, it's not quick, but it's worth it." That Sunday, Pastor preached about the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. "They couldn't see the other side," he said. They couldn't plan their route. They couldn't control the outcome. They just had to trust that when they stepped into the water, God would make a way. Faith isn't about seeing the whole path. It's about taking the next step, trusting that God's already made a way even when you can't see it. I thought about the past 5 months, about all the steps I'd taken without seeing the whole path, turning down the safe job offer, accepting the risky partnership, starting the support group. Each step had required trust. Each step had meant releasing control. And God had made a way. Not always the way I'd expected, not always the way I would have chosen, but a way nonetheless. That evening my parents came over for dinner. My dad pulled me aside. "Your mother and I have been talking. We're proud of you, Nathan. The way you've handled losing your job, the risks you've taken, the person you've become. When I was your age, losing my job would have destroyed me, but you're navigating it with grace. I'm learning, Dad, learning to trust instead of control. It's not natural for me, but I'm learning. It shows. And watching you is teaching me things too. I'm 70 years old, and my son is teaching me about faith. That's a gift." That night I wrote in my journal, 5 months ago, I couldn't have imagined where I'd be today. Laid off from my job, starting a partnership with uncertain income, leading a support group, helping people learn what I'm still learning myself. None of this was in my plan. None of this was how I thought my life would go. But here's what I've learned. My plans weren't better than God's plans. They were just more comfortable, more predictable, more within my ability to control. God's plans are scarier. They require more trust. But they're also more meaningful, more aligned with who I'm becoming, more connected to actually helping people. Losing my job felt like a disaster. It still scares me sometimes, but I'm starting to see it as a gift, a push towards something better, something I wouldn't have chosen on my own because it was too risky. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. I'm learning this in deeper and deeper ways. Not just trusting with my circumstances, but trusting with my career, my security, my future. Not just believing God can handle things, but actually releasing them to Him. Not just saying I trust, but living like I trust. It's hard. Some days I want to grab control back, to return to the predictability of trying to manage everything. But I'm learning that trust, real trust, means staying open-handed even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary. I don't know exactly where this new path will lead. I don't know if the partnership will be successful. I don't know what challenges are coming, but I know God's already there. He's already in my tomorrow. And that's enough. That has to be enough. And increasingly I'm finding that it is. As I closed the journal, I heard Emma stirring in her room. I went to her, picked her up, held her in the quiet darkness. She was 5 months old now, alert and curious, starting to laugh and reach for things. "Your dad is learning some big lessons," I whispered to her, "about trust, about releasing control, about taking risks for the right reasons. And you know what? You're teaching me too, because every day with you reminds me that I can't control your future. I can only love you, guide you, be here for you. The rest is in God's hands, and that's good. That's right. That's how it should be." She looked up at me with those trusting eyes, and I realized that's what faith looked like. Not having all the answers, not controlling all the outcomes, just trusting that someone bigger had it handled, just being present in the moment, just taking the next step. I was learning, still learning, and I would probably always be learning. But that was the journey, and the journey I was discovering was where real life happened. 6 months into this journey, I thought I'd learned everything there was to learn about trust. Then life taught me I'd barely scratched the surface. The partnership with Michael was going well, better than expected actually. We'd signed 3 new clients in the first month, and I was finding genuine joy in the work. The flexibility allowed me to be present with Emma during the day, to lead the support groups, to invest in the community I'd built. But then, Monica's mum called with news that shattered our sense of stability. "Monica, honey, I need to tell you something." Her mother's voice was shaking. "Your father had a stroke. He's in the hospital. It's serious." We were on the next flight to Denver. Monica's dad, Frank, had always been larger than life, strong, healthy, active. Seeing him in that hospital bed, half his face drooping, unable to speak clearly, was devastating. Monica fell apart in a way I'd never seen before. The doctors said the stroke had been major. Frank would need extensive rehabilitation. He might regain some function, but he'd never be the same. And Monica's mom, Carol, couldn't handle his care alone. She was 70 herself, with arthritis and her own health issues. We spent a week in Denver, making arrangements, meeting with doctors, trying to understand what Frank would need. And slowly, a reality became clear. Frank and Carol were going to need ongoing help, significant help. Either they'd need to move to Seattle to be near us, or Monica would need to spend extended periods in Denver with them. On the flight home, Monica was quiet. Finally, she said, "I think I need to take a leave of absence from work. Go back to Denver for a while, help my mom get systems in place, be there for my dad's rehab." My first reaction was panic. We'd just taken a significant pay cut with my job change. Now she was talking about losing her income entirely? How would we manage? What about the mortgage? What about Emma's needs? What about our savings? But I caught myself. This was exactly the kind of situation where the old Nathan would have tried to control everything, would have started running financial scenarios, would have panicked about the future. Instead, I took her hand. "Okay, what do you need from me?" She looked surprised. "That's it? No freaking out about money? No trying to solve this with a spreadsheet?" "I'm scared," I admitted. "I'm really scared about the finances. But your dad just had a stroke. Your mom needs you. That's what matters right now. We'll figure out the rest." "But Nathan, we can't afford—" "We'll figure it out. I trust that God's got this, and more than that, I trust that being there for your parents is more important than financial security. We'll make it work." She cried then, and I held her, not trying to fix it, not trying to manage it, just being there. The next week, Monica took a 3-month leave of absence and went back to Denver. Suddenly, I was a single parent, working full-time, caring for Emma, leading support groups, trying to keep everything together, and doing it all on significantly reduced income. The old Nathan would have collapsed under the pressure, would have tried to control every variable, would have panicked about every expense, would have made himself sick trying to manage the unmanageable. Instead, I practiced what I'd been learning. I did what I could do, arranged for daycare, adjusted my work schedule, asked for help when I needed it, and I released what I couldn't control: the timeline for Frank's recovery, the financial uncertainty, the future. Thomas noticed the change at the men's group. "Nathan, you're carrying a lot right now. How are you holding up?" "Honestly, some days I'm barely holding it together. Some days I'm so tired I can barely function. But I'm not drowning. I'm not trying to control everything. I'm just taking it one day at a time." Carlos added, "That's what faith looks like in the real world. Not perfect peace, not absence of struggle, just choosing trust when everything is hard." One particularly difficult Tuesday, I arrived at the men's group exhausted. Emma had been up half the night teething. I'd had a challenging client meeting, and I'd just gotten a call from Monica that Frank had had a setback in his rehab. I was running on empty. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," I admitted to the group. "I'm trying to trust, trying to not control, trying to be present, but I'm so tired. And I'm scared that I'm failing Emma, failing Monica, failing my clients, failing everyone." James spoke up. "Nathan, you're not failing. You're just human. You're carrying a lot, and it's okay to admit it's hard. Trust doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means being honest about the struggle while still choosing to believe God's got you." Peter, who'd been quiet, said, "Can I share something? When my wife's chronic pain was at its worst, I kept trying to be strong for her, keep everything together, never show weakness, never admit I was struggling, and it almost broke me. Finally, my therapist said, 'You can't carry everything alone. That's not strength, that's pride.' I had to learn to ask for help, to admit I couldn't do it all, to trust that other people could share the load." His words hit me hard. I'd been so focused on learning to trust God that I'd forgotten I also needed to trust people, to ask for help, to admit I couldn't do everything alone. That evening, I called Dave and Lisa, the couple from the new parents group. "I need help," I said simply. "Monica's in Denver with her parents. I'm solo parenting and I'm drowning. Could you maybe take Emma for a few hours this weekend so I can catch up on work?" "Of course," Lisa said immediately. "We'd be happy to. And Nathan, thank you for asking, for trusting us with Emma. That means a lot." I also reached out to my parents, asking if they could come up for a few days to help, and I talked to Michael about adjusting my schedule temporarily. Every conversation was practice in releasing control, in trusting others, in admitting I needed help. The response was overwhelming. My parents came up and stayed for a week. Dave and Lisa took Emma one afternoon a week. Sarah, my former team member, offered to help with some administrative work for the practice. The church community rallied with meal trains and offers of childcare. I was learning a new dimension of trust, trusting people, trusting that they'd follow through, trusting that they wanted to help, trusting that I didn't have to carry everything alone. At the medical crisis support group, I shared about what was happening. "I'm supposed to be helping you all learn to trust in difficult times," I said. "But right now, I'm the one who needs to trust. My father-in-law had a stroke, my wife is in Denver indefinitely, I'm solo parenting and trying to keep a new business afloat, and I'm scared and exhausted." Karen, the woman with breast cancer, said, "Nathan, this is what makes you effective. You're not teaching from a place of having it all figured out. You're teaching from the middle of the struggle. That's what we need. Not someone who's already through it, but someone who's in it and still choosing faith." Another member, Mark, whose teenage son had been diagnosed with leukemia, added, "Watching you trust while things are hard, that helps me more than any sermon could. Because I see it's possible, I see it's real." Their words encouraged me, but I was still struggling. The financial pressure was real. Without Monica's income, we were barely making ends meet. I'd had to dip into savings to cover the mortgage. Every unexpected expense felt like a crisis. One evening, after putting Emma to bed, I sat down to pay bills. Looking at the bank balance, I felt that old familiar panic rising. We had maybe 2 months before we'd be in real trouble. What if Monica couldn't come back in 3 months? What if Frank's recovery took longer? What if we ran out of money? I closed the laptop and prayed. Not a calm prayer, but a desperate one. "God, I'm scared. I'm trying to trust, but I don't see how this works out. I don't see how we make it financially. I need help. I need provision. I need you to show up in a real, tangible way." The next day, I got a call from an unexpected source. Margaret, the client who'd panicked about cryptocurrency months ago, wanted to meet with me. When we sat down, she had a proposal. "Nathan, you helped me more than you know, not just with financial advice, but with peace. You taught me that I didn't need to be afraid, that I could trust. And I've been thinking, I have more money than I need. I want to invest it in something meaningful. Would you consider letting me invest in your partnership? As a silent partner, just providing capital?" I was stunned. "Margaret, that's incredibly generous, but let me finish. I'm not doing this out of charity. I'm doing this because I believe in what you're building, a financial planning practice that helps people find security without anxiety. That's valuable, and I want to be part of it." We talked through the details. Her investment would provide the capital cushion the practice needed to grow. It would allow me to bring on another advisor, which would ease my workload. It would provide financial stability while Monica was gone. "I need to talk to Monica and Michael," I said. "But Margaret, if you're serious, this would be an answer to prayer." After she left, I sat in my office overwhelmed. God had shown up. Not in the way I'd expected, not through a windfall or a miracle, but through an elderly client who wanted to invest in what I was building. Through someone I'd helped, who now wanted to help me. That Sunday, the pastor preached on the story of Elijah and the widow. How Elijah needed food during a famine, and God sent him to a widow who barely had enough for herself. But she shared what she had, and God provided for both of them through the crisis. Sometimes, the pastor said, God provides through unexpected sources, through people we've helped who then help us, through community, through relationships, through connections we didn't even know we needed. God's provision doesn't always look like a check in the mail. Sometimes it looks like people showing up when we need them most. I thought about Margaret's offer, about my parents coming to help, about Dave and Lisa taking Emma, about Sarah offering administrative support, about the meal trains and the childcare and all the ways people had shown up. God was providing, not by eliminating the crisis, not by making everything easy, but by surrounding me with a community that shared the load, by teaching me to receive help, by showing me that trust included trusting people, not just trusting circumstances. Monica called that evening with an update. "Dad's making progress," she said. "Slow progress, but progress. The doctors think he might be able to come home in another month with in-home care, and Mom and I have found a good rehab facility nearby. I think I can come home in 6 weeks instead of 3 months." "That's great, honey. Really great. How are you holding up?" I told her about Margaret's offer, about the community support, about learning to ask for help and receive it. "I'm tired," I admitted. "Really tired. But I'm okay. I'm trusting. And God's providing in ways I never expected." "I'm proud of you," she said softly. 6 months ago, this situation would have destroyed you. Now you're not just surviving. You're still serving, still helping others, still choosing faith. That's transformation, Nathan. Real transformation. That week, Michael and I met with Margaret to formalize her investment in the practice. With the additional capital, we could afford to hire another advisor, which would significantly reduce my workload. We could also afford to provide better benefits for our small team. "This is going to change everything for the practice," Michael said after Margaret left. "But you know what's remarkable? You're not trying to control how we use this money. 6 months ago, you would have had 17 spreadsheets with projections and plans. Now you're just grateful and trusting we'll steward it well." He was right. I had opinions about how to use the investment, but I wasn't trying to control every decision. I was trusting Michael, trusting the process, trusting that we'd figure it out together. At the next men's group, I shared about everything that had happened, about the financial pressure, the fear, the prayer, Margaret's unexpected offer, the community support. Thomas smiled. "Nathan, do you see what's happening? You're living what you've been learning. Trust isn't just a concept for you anymore. It's a practice. You're trusting in real crisis with real stakes, and you're seeing God provide in real ways." "But it's still hard," I said. "I still have moments of fear. I still catch myself wanting to control things." "Of course you do. You're human. But the difference is you're recognizing it and redirecting it. You're choosing trust over and over again. That's faithfulness, Nathan. Not perfection, but persistence." That Friday, I had a breakthrough moment with Ryan. He'd been coming to meet with me every other week since I'd left the firm, and I'd watched him make slow, steady progress. But that day, he seemed different, lighter. "I had a panic attack last week," he said. "Bad one. But here's what was different. I didn't spiral. I recognized what was happening. I called my therapist. I practiced the breathing techniques. I reminded myself that I couldn't control everything. And it passed. It actually passed. I didn't drown in it." "That's huge," I said. "That's real progress. I learned that from watching you. You've had so much happen these past few months, and you've stayed steady. Not perfect, not without struggle, but steady. That showed me it was possible. If you could do it, maybe I could too." His words reminded me of what Karen had said at the support group, that my willingness to trust in the middle of real struggle was more helpful than any perfect example could be. That people needed to see faith was possible in the mess, not just after everything was cleaned up. That night I updated my journal. 6 months ago, I would have called this season a disaster. Monica gone, single parenting, financial pressure, my father-in-law's stroke. I would have tried to control every variable, would have made myself sick with anxiety, would have fallen apart under the pressure. But now I see it differently. This is the testing ground. This is where I learn if what I've been learning is real. And it is real. I'm not perfect at it. I still have moments of fear and panic, but I'm different. I'm choosing trust in the midst of genuine crisis. I'm accepting help. I'm believing that God's providing even when I can't see how. And God is providing, not by eliminating the difficulty, but by surrounding me with community, not by making everything easy, but by giving me strength for each day, not by guaranteeing outcomes, but by being present in the struggle. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. I understand this now in ways I couldn't have 6 months ago. It's not just a comforting phrase, it's the foundation of a completely different way of living, a way that acknowledges I'm not in control, that I can't guarantee outcomes, that tomorrow is beyond my power to manage, but someone else has already gone there. Someone else is already working, and I can trust him. The old Nathan would have tried to save himself through perfect planning. The new Nathan is learning to receive help, to trust people, to believe that community is part of how God provides. I'm learning that strength isn't carrying everything alone. It's having the courage to admit I need help and the humility to accept it when it's offered. I don't know what the next 6 months will bring. Monica will come home eventually. Frank will continue his recovery. The practice will grow. Emma will keep developing. Life will keep happening, and I won't control any of it, but I'll trust through it. I'll keep choosing faith over fear, trust over control, presence over anxiety. That's all I can do, and increasingly, I'm learning it's enough. I closed the journal and checked on Emma one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. 6 months old now. In 6 months, she'd grown and changed so much, and so had I. "I can't control your tomorrow, sweet girl," I whispered. "I can't guarantee your life will be easy or perfect, but I can promise you this. I'll be here, I'll love you, I'll do my part, and I'll trust that God's got the rest. For both of us." She stirred slightly but didn't wake, and I stood there in the quiet darkness, feeling that deep peace that comes from releasing control. Not the absence of worry. I still worried sometimes, but underneath the worry was something solid. Something unshakable, a trust that someone bigger than me had already gone ahead into tomorrow. And that was enough. That was more than enough. It was everything. 7 months after that desperate prayer in the hospital parking lot, I found myself back in the same place where it all began. Not physically, but spiritually. Full circle, but completely different. Monica had been home for 2 weeks. Frank was doing well in his rehab facility in Denver, and Carol had a good support system in place. Life was returning to something resembling normal, except normal looked entirely different now than it had 7 months ago. It was a Saturday morning, and I was sitting in our backyard, watching Emma play on a blanket. She was 7 months old now, sitting up on her own, reaching for everything, full of curiosity and joy. Monica was inside making coffee, and for the first time in weeks, we had nothing urgent to do, nowhere we needed to be. "You look peaceful," Monica said, bringing me a mug and sitting down beside me. "I am peaceful," I realized. Actually peaceful, not pretending, not forcing it, just at rest. That's new for you. It is. 7 months ago, a morning like this would have been impossible. I would have been checking my phone, updating spreadsheets, worrying about something. But right now I'm just here, present, grateful. She leaned against me. "You've changed so much, Nathan. Not just in the big ways, but in the small, everyday ways. You're lighter, more joyful, more alive." That Tuesday at the men's group, Thomas asked me to share my story with the whole group. Not just the pieces I'd shared along the way, but the complete journey from beginning to now. I hadn't realized how much there was to tell until I started. I told them about the hospital parking lot, about the desperate prayer, about the words that had come. "You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me." I told them about the early struggles of learning what that meant, about the baby who wouldn't follow my schedules, about the client who panicked and how I'd learned to respond differently. I told them about my dad's health scare, about learning to wait without obsessive research, about losing my job and having to practice trust when my security was threatened, about Monica's dad's stroke and learning to ask for help, to trust people, not just circumstances. 7 months ago, I thought I was in control of my life, I said. I had plans, spreadsheets, scenarios for every possibility. I thought that's what responsibility looked like. But I was drowning. I was exhausted from trying to manage tomorrow today. And then I learned something that changed everything. I don't need to control tomorrow. I can't control tomorrow. But someone else already has it handled. And that changes how I live today. James spoke up. What would you say to someone who's where you were 7 months ago? Someone who's trying to control everything and making themselves miserable? I thought about it. I'd say this. Your control is an illusion. You're not actually making tomorrow more secure. You're just making today more anxious. And I'd tell them that there's another way. Not a way where you're irresponsible or careless, but a way where you do your part faithfully and trust God with the rest. Stewardship with trust. It's scary at first, but it's also freeing. Carlos added, and you're living proof it's possible. We've watched you go through real crisis, losing your job, your wife being gone for weeks, financial pressure, and you didn't fall apart. You practiced what you preach. I'm not perfect at it, I said. I still have moments where I catch myself trying to control things. Just yesterday I started making a 5-year financial projection and had to stop myself. Old habits die hard. But I recognize them faster now. I redirect quicker, and most importantly, I know what I'm aiming for. Trust, not control. After the meeting, a new guy approached me. His name was Alex, and he looked like I'd looked 7 months ago, exhausted, anxious, wound tight. Can we talk? He asked. I heard what you shared, and I need help. I'm drowning in anxiety. I'm trying to control everything, and it's killing me. We went for coffee, and I told him my story in more detail. He listened with the intensity of someone desperate for a lifeline. How do I start? He asked. How do I learn to trust when I've spent my whole life trying to control? You start where you are, I said. You start by recognizing one thing you're trying to control that you can't control, just one, and you practice releasing it. You do your part, whatever's actually in your power, and then you consciously let go of the outcome. You tell God, this isn't mine to carry. I'm trusting you with this. That sounds terrifying. It is terrifying, but it's also freeing. And here's what I've learned. God meets you in that scary place. When you release control, when you trust, He shows up. Not always in the way you expect, but He shows up. I gave Alex my number and invited him to the anxiety support group Thomas was leading. As he left, I felt that same sense I'd felt with Ryan, with Dave, with Brian, the privilege of walking with someone who was where I'd been, of offering hope that there was another way to live. That Sunday, the pastor preached on the Lord's Prayer, specifically the line, "Give us this day our daily bread." He pointed out that we don't ask for next week's bread or next month's bread. We ask for today's bread, trusting that tomorrow God will provide tomorrow's bread. Jesus is teaching us to live in the present, he said, not to ignore the future or be irresponsible, but to trust that God will provide what we need when we need it. Not before, not in advance, but in the moment. That requires trust. It requires releasing our need to stockpile security. I thought about all my old spreadsheets, all those financial projections stretching decades into the future. I still planned. I was a financial planner after all, but I didn't live there anymore. I didn't put my security in those projections. I lived in today, trusting that tomorrow God would provide tomorrow's needs. After the service, Karen from the Medical Crisis Support Group found me. Nathan, I wanted to tell you something. I got my latest scan results yesterday. The cancer is in remission, complete remission. I hugged her, genuinely thrilled. Karen, that's amazing. That's such good news. It is. But you know what? Even if the results had been different, I would have been okay. Not happy, not without grief, but okay. Because you taught me that my peace doesn't depend on the outcome. It depends on trusting that God's with me whatever happens. That's a gift, Nathan, thank you. Her words moved me deeply. This was why God had walked me through my own journey, so I could walk with others through theirs. Not because I had all the answers, but because I'd learned to trust in the questions. That week, Michael and I hired our new advisor, a young woman named Rachel, who reminded me a bit of myself at that age. Ambitious, talented, but also anxious, driven by fear of failure. In our first team meeting, I shared our philosophy. We're not just managing money here. We're helping people find security without anxiety. That means we have to model it ourselves. So we work sustainable hours. We maintain boundaries. We don't glorify overwork or burnout. And we remember that our value isn't in our performance. It's in who we are. Rachel looked surprised. That's not what I'm used to hearing in this industry. I know, but we're building something different here. A practice where people can thrive without sacrificing their health or their families or their peace. Does that resonate with you? It does, she said quietly. More than you know. Over the following weeks, I watched Rachel wrestle with the same things I'd wrestled with. The urge to work late, to be perfect, to control every outcome. And I had the privilege of mentoring her, of sharing what I'd learned, of pointing her toward trust instead of control. One afternoon, she came to my office looking stressed. Nathan, I made a mistake with a client account. Nothing major, easily fixable, but I feel like I've failed, like I've let everyone down. Did you fix it? I asked. Yes, immediately. And I talked to the client. They were fine with it. Then it's done. Rachel, mistakes happen. You're human. The measure of a good advisor isn't never making mistakes. It's how you handle them when they happen. You caught it, fixed it, communicated about it. That's all anyone can do. But what if I make more mistakes? What if I'm not good enough? I smiled, recognizing my younger self in her words. Rachel, you're going to make mistakes. That's guaranteed. But you're also going to learn and grow and become excellent at what you do. Not by being perfect, but by being faithful. By doing your best, learning from failures, and trusting that your worth isn't dependent on flawless performance. She looked relieved. Thank you. I needed to hear that. That Friday, the Medical Crisis Support Group had a special meeting. Mark, whose son had been battling leukemia, shared that his son had completed treatment and was in remission. We celebrated together. But then Mark said something powerful. This journey taught me something I never would have learned otherwise. It taught me that I'm not in control, that I can't protect my kids from everything, that life is going to bring hard things, and my job isn't to prevent them. It's to walk through them with faith. I wouldn't have chosen this path, but I'm grateful for what it taught me. His words resonated with everyone in the room. We'd all learned the same lesson through different circumstances, that control is an illusion, that trust is the only real option, that God is faithful even in the hardest times. After the meeting, Alex, the new guy from the men's group, approached me. I've been coming to both groups for a few weeks now, and I wanted to tell you, I'm starting to get it, starting to understand what you all are talking about. I'm not there yet, but I can see the path. That's all any of us can do, I said. See the path and keep walking it, one step at a time. That evening, Monica and I put Emma to bed together and then sat on the couch just talking, something we hadn't done enough of lately. She told me about her dad's progress, about how scared she'd been, about what she'd learned through the whole experience. I learned that I can trust you, she said, not just with the small things, but with the big things. When I told you I needed to go to Denver, you didn't panic or try to talk me out of it or make it about money. You just supported me. That's huge, Nathan. That's not who you were a year ago. A year ago, I would have tried to control the situation, would have made spreadsheets showing how we couldn't afford it, would have made your dad's crisis about my anxiety. But you didn't. You trusted. And because you trusted, I could be there for my parents without carrying guilt or worry about you and Emma. That's a gift. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Monica said, "What do you think the next 7 months will bring?" The old Nathan would have started planning, projecting, trying to predict, but I just smiled. I have no idea, and that's okay. We'll do our part. Work faithfully, love well, stay present, and we'll trust God with the rest. Whatever comes, we'll handle it together. That night, I opened my journal for what I knew would be an important entry: 7 months. It felt like a lifetime, and also like no time at all. 7 months ago, I was a different person. I lived in tomorrow, trying to control outcomes I couldn't control, exhausting myself with impossible responsibility. I thought security came from perfect planning. I thought love meant controlling situations to prevent bad outcomes. I thought faith was for people who couldn't handle reality. But then Emma was born, and everything I'd tried to plan fell apart, and I found myself in a hospital parking lot crying out to a God I wasn't sure was listening. And he answered, not with a miracle that made everything easy, but with words that changed how I saw everything. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust in me. These 7 months have been a masterclass in trust, learning to steward without controlling, learning to plan without obsessing, learning to be responsible without being anxious, learning to help others without trying to manage their journeys, learning to receive help without feeling weak, learning to trust people as well as circumstances. I've lost my job and found a better one. I've watched my father-in-law have a stroke and my wife leave for weeks. I've faced financial pressure and had to learn to ask for help. I've walked with people through cancer, heart conditions, panic attacks and chronic illness, and through it all I've learned that God is faithful. Not faithful in the sense that he prevents all difficulty, but faithful in the sense that he's present in all difficulty. I'm not perfect. I still catch myself trying to control things. Just this week I found myself making elaborate financial projections and had to stop. Old patterns are persistent, but I recognize them now. I redirect them. I choose trust over control, again and again and again. And I'm different, not because I never worry, but because worry doesn't control me anymore. Not because I never try to control things, but because I catch myself and course correct. Not because I have all the answers, but because I trust someone who does. Emma is 7 months old. In 7 months she's grown from a newborn who couldn't even hold up her head to a baby who sits and plays and laughs and reaches for the world. And in 7 months, I've grown from someone drowning in anxiety to someone learning to rest in trust. I don't know what the next 7 months will bring. I don't know what challenges are coming, what tests await, what difficulties we'll face. And for the first time in my adult life, that's okay. I don't need to know. I don't need to control it. I don't need to prepare for every possibility, because someone else has already gone ahead into my tomorrow. He's already there, already working, already preparing the way, and that's enough. That has to be enough. And increasingly, I'm finding it is enough. I closed the journal and went to Emma's room one last time. She was sleeping peacefully, her little chest rising and falling. 7 months old, her entire future stretched before her, unknown and uncontrollable. Sweet girl, I whispered, I can't control your tomorrow. I can't guarantee you'll never hurt, never struggle, never face hard things. But I can promise you'll never face them alone. Your mom and I will be here. Your community will surround you, and most of all, the God who made you will be with you every step of the way. I thought about all the people I'd walked with over these months. Ryan, learning to manage panic attacks. Dave and Lisa, trusting through their son's heart condition. Margaret, finding peace in her finances. Brian, releasing his control over fertility. Alex, just beginning his journey. Rachel, learning to fail gracefully. All of us learning the same lesson in different contexts. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust. I walked back to my bedroom where Monica was already asleep. I slipped into bed beside her, feeling that deep peace that had become familiar over these months. Not the absence of all concern, not the guarantee that nothing would ever go wrong, but the settled trust that someone bigger than me had it all handled. 7 months ago, I'd cried out in desperation, God, if you're there, I need help. And he'd answered, not by making life easy, but by teaching me to trust when life was hard. Not by preventing all crisis, but by being present in every crisis. Not by giving me control, but by teaching me I didn't need it. Thank you, I prayed quietly. Thank you for meeting me in that parking lot. Thank you for those words that changed everything. Thank you for walking with me through these 7 months. Thank you for teaching me that I don't need to control tomorrow. Thank you for being trustworthy when I'm learning to trust. And in the quiet darkness I felt that familiar presence, not overwhelming, not dramatic, just steady and sure. The presence that had been with me every step of this journey, the presence that would be with me every step of whatever came next. I didn't need to control tomorrow. Someone else already had it handled, and that changed everything. If you've walked with me through this story, I want to ask you something. What are you trying to control right now? What tomorrow are you exhausting yourself trying to guarantee? What would change in your life if you truly believe that you don't need to control tomorrow? I'm not going to tell you it's easy. It's not. 7 months in, I still struggle, but I'm different, and you can be different too. Start where you are. Pick one thing you're trying to control that you can't control. Do your part, whatever's actually in your power, and release the rest. Tell God, this isn't mine to carry, I'm trusting you with this. And then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, because that's what trust is. Not a one-time decision, but a daily practice. Not perfection, but direction. Not having all the answers, but knowing the one who does. You don't need to control tomorrow. Trust. Just trust. It's enough.